Honorable members, I request that we start off our meeting, and I request the Honorable Dr. Chikati to lead us with a word of prayer.
So let us pray. Almighty God, who in your wisdom and goodness have appointed the officers of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to behold with abundant favor as your servants whom you have been pleased to call to the performance of important trust in this republic. Let your blessings descend upon us here as assembled, and grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberations in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chikati. Again, members, we are now here for the afternoon session, and I want to request that we do a round of introduction. My name is Dede Nyoro, MP for Kiharu constituency and the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee.
And Masa Mary, MP Teso South and the vice chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee.
I'm Peter Francis Masara, MP Suna West constituency.
Ali Wario, member for Garsen, member of this committee.
Masaka Bernard Shinali, MP Kolomani, a member of this committee.
John Chikati, MP Tongaren, and member of this committee.
Joseph Lekutron, MP for Laisamis, and a member of this committee.
Kitila Yolentutu, MP Narok South, and member of this committee.
Sam Atandi, member for Lagos Songa.
Ruth Odinga, member of Kisumu County and a member of this committee.
I'm Matthias Robi, MP Kuria West, member of this committee.
I am Michael Mushera, MP Orojororok, member of this committee.
My name is Danson Mwashako, member of Parliament Undani and a member of this committee.
Amelia Diamo Mabona, member of Parliament Suban North, member of this committee and ranking member.
Major Donk is my name, member of Parliament Tabaka Central constituency, Nairobi County, and a member of this committee.
Good afternoon, my name is David Ochieng, member for Ugenya, member of this committee.
Good afternoon, my name is Japheth Nyakundi, member of Parliament for Kitutu Church North, and a member of this committee.
My name is Kawanjiko, MP Kiamba, and a member of this committee.
Christopher Seka, MP Quisero, member of this committee.
John Paul Murigi is my name, MP Gembe South constituency in Meru County and a member of this committee. Thank you.
Yeah, Makali Mulu is my name, member of Parliament Kitui Central and a member of this committee.
They have Mukami, County MP Nyeri, member of this committee.
Naisula Lesuda, MP Samburu West and a member of this committee.
Dr. Masinde, Director, Parliamentary Budget Office.
Robert Nyaga, Acting Senior Deputy Director, Parliamentary Budget Office.
Dr. Abel Nyagwachi from Parliamentary Budget Office.
Julie Mudiga from the Parliamentary Budget Office.
Sylvia Ocharo, Policy Analyst.
My name is Lois Solesia, Parliamentary Budget Office.
Priscilla Wango, Parliamentary Budget Office.
Solomon Albala, Parliamentary Budget Office.
Kiminza Kioko, Fiscal Analyst, PBO. Onyango Adera, Parliamentary Budget Office.
Frida Ngari, Media Relations Officer.
Jared Amara, Parliamentary Budget Office.
Regina Muturi from the Parliamentary Budget Office.
Millicent Makina, Parliamentary Budget Office.
David Willimu Hansard.
Oko Simon, Sergeant at Arms.
Good afternoon, my name is Nimrod Ochieng, Audit Officer.
I'm David Gedeji, Office of the Auditor General, Liaison Office.
Good afternoon, Danson Kachumbo, Committee Clerk.
Thank you very much, members. And members, as you can see, today we are hosting the National Treasury, led by the Prime Cabinet Secretary, His Excellency Musalia Mudavadi. And I will request that Your Excellency, you may introduce your team.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Musalia Mudavadi, acting CS for the National Treasury. I'll request my colleagues to introduce themselves very quickly.
Honorable Chair, honorable members of this committee, my name is Chris Kito, the Principal Secretary, National Treasury, and we are accompanied here by a large team, and I'll ask them to introduce.
My name is Albert Mwenda, the Director General for Budget, Fiscal and Economic Affairs at the National Treasury.
Bernard Dongo, DG Accounting Services, National Treasury.
Good afternoon, honorable members. My name is Agnes Odhiambo, advisor in the Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Honorable Chair, honorable members of the committee, my name is Nick Piketty, Secretary, Legislative and Parliamentary Affairs, Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Honorable members, my name is Peter Warutere, Secretary, Strategic Communication in the Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary in Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Samuel Okilo, Director of Planning, National Treasury.
Good afternoon. My name is Eunice Kigen, Budget Department, National Treasury.
Good afternoon. John Njera is my name, Director of Planning, Macro and Fiscal Affairs, National Treasury.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Miriam Musyoki. I work under the National Treasury.
My name is Nixon Murathi. I work under the National Treasury.
Good afternoon. My name is Anders Ihachi, Press Service from the Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Honorable members, Isabella Koge is my name, Deputy Director Parliamentary Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, again, I want to welcome you to this session. As has been the way we conduct our business, when there is a budget cycle, we are usually very, very busy as the budget committee, because we have to listen to all the departmental committees, then representing all the ministries, departments, and agencies of government. And then this process is always integral to the National Treasury. What we do here is very integral to the National Treasury, and that is why the entire process is always very consultative. Previously, we could have an entry meeting with the National Treasury even before we meet all the other MDAs and through their departmental committees. But this time, we were very squeezed in regards to time, and we had then to only have one meeting, which is both the entry and the exit meeting, because we purpose to be tabling this report to the floor of the House tomorrow, Tuesday. And therefore, whatever we are doing now is to get feedback from the National Treasury, see what else we need to do together, so that as we table the report tomorrow, it is a report that encompasses our aspirations and the aspirations of the government. Members, even before I throw the ball back to the National Treasury, it is important that we all know why we are conducting these meetings. We have been saying it as a ritual to all the people who've been appearing. This is unprecedented, where we are having a supplementary budget barely below a month after we pass the main budget. We are actually having the supplementary budget, but to us, technically, we know it is actually the main budget, because we never had a chance also to implement the budget that we passed and was signed into law by the President and became the Appropriations Act. And therefore, what we'll be doing today, to the benefit of all Kenyans, is actually the main budget. It's only called the supplementary one because there is no other semantics for it. Members, we passed a budget of over 4 trillion shillings. We have had now to relook at what we need to do now, because the budget we passed just shy of 4 trillion. It was 4.992 trillion. We had hoped that after passing the expenditure side of the budget, then the budget will be funded. But the Kenyan people told us we need to do something, our things differently. And therefore, we then had to make an arrangement where our revenue side of the budget matches with the expenditure side. Because the revenue raising measures, if they are not there, then it means even the expenditure cannot continue to exist as it was. Therefore, what we are doing is two-way, and will be enumerated better by the National Treasury. It is to borrow slightly more. We had a budget then with a fiscal deficit of 3.83%. Currently, we are now having one before us, which is around 4.2 to 4.3% deficit to GDP ratio. It means we are borrowing slightly more. On the other hand, we have had now to look at ourselves internally and inward, and therefore look at expenditure that we can postpone and others that we could cancel, so that we are able to live in a manner that matches the revenue that we expect. And in that respect then, we have been holding Your Excellency meetings with the departmental committees. All of them without exemption have had budget cuts. And all of them, I want to appreciate all the members of parliament through the departmental committees that they are members in, that we have decided, all of us, that these times are different, and therefore we need to think differently. And for the first time, Your Excellency, in my terms in service of Kenyans as an MP, I've never had any other chance where CDF is being cut and there seems to be no one complaining about it. This is the first time I have seen. And we are doing that because we know where we are, and we really need to look at our financials and live within our means. Also, Your Excellency, we are cutting this budget across all levels of government and across all departments of government. When it comes to all levels, because I'm saying that because they have appeared before you came, we are actually looking at the equitable share, which is likely also to have a haircut of 20 billion. The parliament itself, parliament is losing 3.7 billion Kenya shillings. And also the national government is losing. Every other person has to contribute to this deficit. As I come to the close, there are things that we have gone through as the parliament, through the departmental committees, and we feel that as also the representatives of the and if there is no enough money, there are things that we have decided that we must fund. One of those things, honorable members, is that we have decided, and the Education Committee appeared before us, that the 46,000 JSS interns who have been almost volunteering in our learning institutions, being paid monies that are not commensurate with the work they are doing, that we have to provide monies for their confirmation to permanent and pensionable terms. The second thing that we have looked at as the committee, and we feel it is very important for us to fund, is the UHC staff who have also been in those kind of situations. There are also some other staff within our healthcare who have also been in internships, and we are also looking forward into funding their confirmation into permanent and pensionable. The other thing that we looked at through the Departmental Committee of Agriculture is that we are going to be funding the fertilizer subsidy to a tune of 10 billion Kenya shillings. And on top of that, Your Excellency, also, we purpose also to fund other critical areas. For example, the new KCC, we are providing for them over 2 billion shillings. Raw milk prices. When it rains, milk prices go down and the farmers lose. So we are giving new KCC 1.5 billion Kenya shillings to act as defense for the milk prices when it comes to what the farmers get, so that farmers can get at the very least 50 shillings per litre, and therefore we are providing for 53, so that at around 3 shillings we'll take care of the SACCOs management and the farmers get their fair share. We have also included monies for coffee, cherry fund, more over 2 billion shillings. We have also provided monies 2 billion to start clearing coffee debts for the coffee farmers. At the same time, we have provided monies for sugar reforms for sugar farmers who have had arrears owed to public factories, and also in terms of technology enhancement within the sugar sector, so that we improve the sugar sector to be sucrose based other than just weight. There are many things that we have considered, but I want to first stop there, even knowing that Your Excellency, there are expectations on this committee. We had the Maraga Commission, which went around our security organs, and they have there provided that our security officers deserve an immediate enhancement of their take-home and salaries. We are looking for ways, if it comes, we will be glad that also we honor the task force by seeing what we can do, so that we also incorporate their views in the budget making process. There are many things which I'm sure you'll be enumerating, and in that respect, I now want to throw the ball to the side of His Excellency Musalia Mudavadi, who is the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your comments, and also indicating that you have already led on austerity measures. I want to say that we concur with you, at least I do, that this is really unprecedented, because it's the first time in the history of Kenya that a supplementary estimate is coming into place barely a month after the new financial year comes into force. So we are truly living in completely uncharted waters, and therefore this calls for very tough measures. We'll give an outline from the Treasury perspective, and we've shared a document with everybody. There are some areas where there's concurrence, I'm sure, with what the committee has established, and there could be areas where there could be some variance. And I believe that the purpose of this meeting is to be able to enable us to close ranks before you make the final presentation to Parliament. I will take the members through this document so that we follow as I make comments, and then where necessary, definitely I have my technical team led by the PS. They'll be able to delve deeper into some specific areas that maybe require a more detailed clarification. But on a lighter note, Mr. Chairman, before I start making my form, let me just put it on record that I'm acting in so many ministries, but I want to assure Kenyans I'm not earning any acting allowance. Because tough times call for austerity measures. So I think it should go on record that that is the position. So, Mr. Chairman, let me just draw members to page 2 of the document. Here we say that the National Treasury prepared the financial year 2024-25 supplementary estimates number 1 in accordance with Article 223 of the Constitution and Section 40 of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 412A. The focus, Mr. Chairman, of this financial year supplementary estimates is to align the budget to the revised fiscal framework following the withdrawal of the Finance Bill 2024. Mr. Chairman, I'm sure members are aware that the National Assembly considered and approved the financial year 2024-25 expenditures, which were contained in the National Assembly Appropriations Bill number 34 of 2024, and His Excellency the President assented to it. The budget was to be funded through additional revenue measures amounting to Kenya shillings 344.3 billion, which were contained in the Finance Bill 2024, which everybody now knows that the President declined to assent to, resulting in a financing gap of similar amounts. And the reasons for his decline are well known to all Kenyans. So he did decline to assent to that bill. In view of this, the Treasury has prepared the financial year 2024 supplementary estimates, number 1, to cut down on planned activities and projects to close the financing gap of the said figure of 344.3 billion and to align the budget to the revised fiscal framework. Mr. Chairman, the proposed realignment covers quite a number of areas, but let me just flag. As indicated earlier, the withdrawal of the 2024 Finance Bill forced the government to forego an estimated revenue amount of 344.3 billion. The government will nonetheless continue with the implementation of the revenue-raising measures contained in the Finance Act of 2023. So the 2024 is out of the way, so we are working on the basis of the 2023 Finance Act. Now, to ensure the expenditures, Mr. Chairman, page 3, item 7, to ensure that expenditures contained in the financial year 2024-25 Appropriations Act are aligned to the revised fiscal framework, we propose the following measures. 1, expenditure rationalization. 2, adjustment of the projected revenue and borrowing. And 3, to implement policy measures to contain wastage. The rationalization of the budget, Mr. Chairman, calls for the following. The National Treasury proposes to rationalize tax revenue, that is for GK funded, Government of Kenya funded expenditures, allocations in the recurrent and development budget for ministries and departments and agencies, including allocations to the constitutional commissions, independent offices, parliament, the judiciary, and shareable allocation to county governments as provided in table 1 in your document. So basically, Mr. Chairman, I'm affirming your position that everybody is taking a haircut. There's no exception whatsoever. Mr. Chairman, under item 9, on the development budget rationalization, because there's a table there for members to see, but I just want to talk to the points, and then we can come back to the table. We propose to rationalize the Government of Kenya funded development budget by 138.5 billion Kenya shillings, and this includes 8.3 billion from the NGCDF in synchronization with the revised revenue projections, 1 billion from Parliament, and 800 million from the judiciary. And at 10, we list some of the proposed development budget cuts. They will include some of these, not all, but we're just listing some. And there, Mr. Chairman, you will notice that we are going to have to slash 14.6 billion of public facilities. That is the last mile item. We will have to slash 14.1 billion from the roads, 6.5 billion from water, sanitation and irrigation projects, 6.5 billion from the police modernization project, 5.2 billion from the school infrastructure improvement, 3.3 billion for university infrastructure, 3.3 billion for settlement of the landless, 3.1 billion for action and equipping of TVET institutes, and 2 billion from the Hustlers Fund. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm just flagging this because the haircut that we are taking calls for very tough measures. Some of them are pleasant, but we have to do that. In terms of additional expenditure, we have proposed additional allocations for critical government programs in the financial year 2025, as indicated on paragraph 11, and you have touched on some of them. 2 billion for coffee debts, 1 billion for sugarcane farmers reforms, 500 million Kenya shillings for KCC factories to support the milk, 500 million for the tree planting programs, 450 million for the leather factory, Kenene leather factory, and 200 million for Hides Fund. Mr. Chairman, on paragraph 12, we also indicate that we close the year, financial year 2023-2024, with some carryovers amounting to 218.5 billion. And out of this amount, we propose to factor 68.1 billion in the financial year 2024-25. That means we are bringing it back into that. And this will cover 23.8 billion for pensions and gratuities, 30.8 billion for transfer to counties, and 13.5 billion for the NGCDF. Mr. Chairman, in view of the above adjustments in the development budget, some of the key areas to be funded in the financial year 2024-25 development budget are also provided in table 2. So that gives the detail, and the total amount we are talking of is 203 billion Kenya shillings, 203.3 billion Kenya shillings. Now, Mr. Chairman, to realize the above mentioned realignment, the fiscal framework for the financial year 2024-25 budget has also been revised in the following manner, and I draw members to page 8, which deals with the revenue projections. Paragraph 15, the total revenue, including appropriations in aid, has been revised to 3,057.4 billion. That is 3 trillion, basically, which amounts to 16.9% of GDP, and it comprises of ordinary revenues of 2.6 trillion and A&A of about 425 or 26 billion. The point figures are there. The review of the revenues has taken into account the base effect arising from the outcome of the collections in the financial year 2023 to 24, and then withdrawal of the Finance Bill 2024 and impact of the withdrawn Land Act Amendment Bill, because that has also been withdrawn. The revised revenue projections also include additional revenue expected to come from the extension of the ongoing tax amnesty. We project that we could raise up to 30 billion from the ongoing tax amnesty. And then we hope to raise by winding down 47 state-owned enterprises, we could raise 7.3 billion Kenya shillings. And then we also realize that there'll be an impact of an increase in road maintenance levy, where we can raise close to 32 billion, which we propose to accrue to the Exchequer. The net of these adjustments are also indicated on the table below, that is table 3. But basically, what we are beginning to bring out is that the impact of the withdrawal of the finance bill is extremely heavy on us as a country. Now, what are the expenditure projections? On paragraph 17, our projections have been revised to 3.8 trillion. That is 21.4% of GDP. And this comprises a recurrent of about 2.8 billion, 15.7% of GDP, and the development of expenditure now drops to Kenya shillings 579 billion. That is only 3.2% of GDP. That, Mr. Chairman, is the development expenditure. Just 3.2% of GDP. That is a very, very big hit. The total allocation of shareable revenue to county government is projected at 410.9 billion Kenya shillings. That is 2.3% of GDP, which is inclusive of the 30.8, the carryover that I referred to. And then we have an allocation to the contingency fund of 4 billion. Mr. Chairman, at paragraph 18, because you will notice that the expenditure, even though we have gone cut back, but there's a financing deficit that is now arising. This fiscal deficit, including grants, has been revised to Kenya shillings 761 billion, that is 4.2% of GDP, in the financial year 2024-2025. Before the withdrawal of the Finance Act, the projection here was about 3.2% of GDP as the fiscal deficit, but now it has had to widen. This fiscal deficit will be financed by net borrowing of 356.4 billion, that is 2% of GDP, and net domestic borrowing of 404.6 billion, 2.2% of GDP. The overall gross change in the financial year 2024-25 national government budget, Mr. Chairman, again is indicated in table 4. The overall gross change in the financial year 2024-25 budget is a reduction of 121.8 billion, which reflects 1.9%, which is within the provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution. Mr. Chairman, your committee, through you, raised some very specific questions to be responded to. And now under page 10, I want to try and just briefly summarize. The detail is in the document, but I'll try and summarize the highlights of the questions that you did raise. This was while inviting us to comment on these supplementary estimates. So question number 1 was, what are the growth prospects for the financial year 2024-25 amid the prevailing uncertain economic environment? Mr. Chairman, the Kenyan economy is currently unwinding from the effects of negative and persistent global domestic shocks that have pushed the economy to its lowest activity level. The shocks included COVID-19 pandemic and effects of climate change, from the prolonged drought in 2021 to the floods in 2024. These shocks escalated the cost of essential household commodities. They also pushed up fuel prices and led to a rapid depreciation of the Kenya shilling exchange rate, thus piling pressure on public debt. Mr. Chairman, through focused policy interventions and structural reforms, the government efforts have started to yield some positive results. The economy grew by 5.6% in 2023, up from 4.9% in 2022, a demonstration of resilience and the sustenance of economic recovery. This growth momentum has continued into 2024, with the economy expanding by 5% in the first quarter, and it is projected to grow by 5.5% by the end of the year. This growth is largely driven by a strong rebound in the agricultural sector, which benefited from favorable weather conditions after 2 years of severe droughts. Additionally, service sectors remained resilient, with tourism, transport, real estate, financial, and ICT services supporting growth. Private domestic demand is expected to remain resilient, even as the public sector consolidates further, while providing support for government initiatives aimed to benefit people at the bottom of the income pyramid. Mr. Chairman, this strong growth will be reinforced by ongoing interventions under the bottom-up economic transformation. The better objectives are bringing down the cost of living, eradicating hunger, creating jobs, expanding the tax base, improving foreign exchange balances, and inclusive growth. The MTP4 adopted a value chain approach with the better core pillars and key enablers clustered under 5 sectors, that is finance and production, infrastructure, social, environment and natural resources, and governance and public administration. Economic growth over the medium term will be driven by raising agricultural productivity, transforming the micro, small, and medium enterprise economy, increasing investment in housing and settlement, strengthening healthcare through universal health coverage, and investing in the digital superhighway and creative economy. Mr. Chairman, let me draw members to paragraph 25. That is on inflation. Inflation is now firmly under control at 4.6% in June 2024, from 7.9% in 2023, and a peak of 9.6% in October 2022, due to easing of food and energy prices. The appreciating shilling produced a strong pass-through effect to lower domestic prices, supported by a tight monetary policy stance and interventions by government in providing subsidized fertilizer and seeds, which continue to lower the cost of food production, but also revitalize agricultural production. Inflation is projected to remain within the target band over the medium term. Mr. Chairman, as you know, the target band is between 2.5 up to 7.5. Tight monetary policy to stabilize inflation has led to rising interest rates and a slowdown in the growth of the private sector credit. The interbank rate increased to 13.3% in June 2024 compared to 9.6% in June 2023, while the 91-day Treasury bills rate increased to 16% from 11.5% over the same period, thereby increasing the cost of borrowing by government from the domestic market. So, Mr. Chairman, the flip side is that when we don't have revenue, then government has to borrow. So the interest rates are beginning to rise in the domestic market because now the government is beginning to re-enter into that space. Commercial bank lending to the private sector declined to grow by 4.5% in April 2024 and 7.9% in March 2024, down from 13.2% in March 2023. This has had negative effects on private sector activities. The consequences of fighting supply-driven inflation is that it has negative effects on economic vibrancy in the short term. So basically, we are living in a dangerous situation where we are beginning to slow down the private sector from a trajectory that was picking up. Mr. Chairman, the current account balance or the current account deficit improved to 3.9% of GDP in the 12 months to April 2024, down from 4.7% of GDP in a similar period in 2023. And this was supported by 7.7% decline in goods imported, reflecting lower imports across all categories except machinery and transport equipment. Here you can also say that we benefited from the increased food production, and therefore there was less of food imports. Our exports increased by 2.9%, reflecting increased exports of agricultural commodities and re-exports. Mr. Chairman, tourism receipts rebounded faster than anticipated to their pre-COVID-19 levels. Tourist arrivals improved by 27.2% in the 12 months to March 2024, compared to a similar period in 2023. So that was a real good show from the tourism sector. Mr. Chairman, remittances increased by 12.8% to US $4.5 billion in the 12 months to May 2024, compared to 3.997 billion over a similar period in 2023. This increased forex inflows into the country. Some went to investment while others supported household consumption. That means there's a very strong growth in the diaspora remittances. Mr. Chairman, tight policies and flexible exchange rate, coupled with initiatives to attract foreign direct investment and enhance export performance, are anticipated to help stabilize the current account deficit around 4% of GDP in the medium term. So whatever we do, we must make sure that we are not chasing away foreign direct investment as a nation. Mr. Chairman, our foreign exchange reserves, the official foreign exchange reserves, which stood at 7.8 billion US dollars, that is an import cover of 4 months, 4.1 to be precise, was available up to May 2024. And this continues to provide adequate cover and a buffer against any short-term shocks in the foreign exchange market. The exchange rate to the dollar has stabilized in the range of 128 to 131 since February 2024. The exchange rate to the dollar stood at 129.5 by end June 2024, from an all-time high of 160.8 by end of January 2024. Through the repayment of the 2024 Eurobond, the government successfully removed the investor uncertainty and market perception improved significantly. The appreciation and stability of the exchange rate has created confidence and triggered inflows of foreign direct investment and attracted investors to the Nairobi Securities Exchange. This appreciation has helped to reduce debt service costs, improve performance of domestic borrowing, and stabilize interest rates. Mr. Chairman, the technical people will be able to give some greater light on the actual numbers around the debt that we have settled, public debt, particularly external. I think it's important that this comes out so that Kenyans can appreciate the magnitude of this challenge we are facing. Now, you did ask a question, Mr. Chairman, also around the risks to the macroeconomic outlook. Now, under paragraph 30, the situation is as this. The outlook is subject to elevated uncertainty because of domestic and external risks. On the domestic side, the risks relate to the following. 1, unpredictable weather conditions due to the impact of climate change, which could resume food insecurity issues and therefore inflation pressures that may dampen growth. 2, the tight fiscal space due to the impact of the multiple shocks that have affected the global and domestic economy might lead to tight liquidity conditions for financing the budget. And 3, because this is very realistic now, the ongoing demonstrations are causing great risk to economic activities, including collection of revenue, the impacting on the tourism sector, and disruption in businesses. So what is going on is having a very, very serious impact on the economy, and even these supplementary figures we are working on, if this persists, the country will be forced to look again for further haircuts and further adjustments. On the external front, uncertainties in the global economy, the economic outlook stemming from the escalating geopolitical fragmentations could result in higher commodity prices that pose a risk to domestic inflation outcomes, leading to further tightening of financial conditions. Mr. Chairman, these external uncertainties, for instance, and the conflicts, right now there's no free navigation in the Red Sea. About 40% of the traffic that goes through the Red Sea has been scuttled because of that conflict. And they are forcing maritime operators to take the longer route, and this is beginning to feed into the economy and the prices in our place. There's also the continued strengthening of the US dollar against the global currencies arising from aggressive monetary policy tightening presents significant risks to financial flows and puts pressures on the exchange rate with implications on growth and inflation. So basically also how the other economies are responding is going to have an impact on our economy. Question 2, you wanted to know the implication of the proposed reductions in development expenditure on the better priorities and ultimately growth. Mr. Chairman, the National Assembly approved 270.9 billion Kenya shillings on account of better priorities while approving the financial year 2024-25 budget estimates. Out of this amount, 250 billion has been ring-fenced. The National Treasury will endeavor to prioritize better funded projects in the financial year 2024 budget and medium term. Question 3, you wanted a detailed fiscal framework for the financial year 2024 and 2025 and the medium term. Mr. Chairman, the financial year 2024-25 fiscal framework has been revised to reflect the changes in the financial year 2024-25 expenditure estimates, and we have provided in the folder before you a detailed fiscal framework which has an attachment of Annex 1A and 1B to respond to that issue. So I'll draw members to the annexes in the document. Question 4, you wanted to know the basis and criteria informing the sectors or areas where the budget has been rationalized. Mr. Chairman, the National Assembly approved the Finance Bill 2024 on 25th June 2024. However, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya declined to assent to the Finance Bill 2024. The Finance Bill was meant to create additional resources amounting to 344.3 billion. The withdrawal of the said bill created a financing gap of a similar amount in order to align the financial year 2024-25 budget estimates. We have rationalized the budget estimates by 178.3 billion Kenya shillings in the following manner. Recurrent budget rationalization. In the recurrent budget, we are proposing to rationalize expenditure amounting to 40.3 billion Kenya shillings. This amount is inclusive of 2.7 billion rationalization under Parliament, $500 million under the judiciary. The rationalization targeted non-priority areas in the recurrent budget, as well as rationalization of salary adjustments for civil servants and teachers. B, rationalization of personnel emoluments. Mr. Chairman, we propose to rationalize allocations for phase 2, salary adjustments for teachers and civil servants amounting to 15 billion Kenya shillings. This comprises Kenya shillings 10 billion for salary adjustment for teachers and 5 billion for civil servants. And B, rationalization of offices of First Lady and spouse to the Deputy President and advisors under the Presidency. Mr. Chairman, as directed, we have rationalized 1.525 billion from the offices of the First Lady and the spouse to the Deputy President after exempting allocations for salaries to employees and advisors under the Presidency. The current items are indicated in detail in Table 5. That gives you the percentage of cuts and all the areas that have been affected. Table 5 on page 17. On the development budget rationalization, Mr. Chairman, we propose to rationalize the development budget with the exemption of GOK counterpart funding as well as critical ongoing projects. We rationalized projects by 138.5 billion from Government of Kenya funded projects. This includes 8.3 billion from the NG-CDF and Kenya shillings 1 billion from Parliament and Kenya shillings 800 million from the judiciary. And some of the affected areas I'll come to shortly, I will highlight. But I just want to point out that when we say exemption to GOK counterpart funding, honorable members, I know you're familiar with it, but the general public may not be familiar with the whole idea of why, what we mean by counterpart funding here. This is where there's supposed to be a Government of Kenya contribution, and then the rest of the money comes from the donor that is funding that particular project. Now, some of the major areas affected by rationalization of the development budget include the following. And I had highlighted some earlier, but let me repeat. 14.1 billion for roads projects, 14.6 billion for electrification, that is the last mile and public facilities, 6.5 billion for water and sanitation, 6.5 for police modernization, 3.3 billion for settlement of the landless, 3.1 billion for construction and equipping TVET institutes, 5.2 billion school infrastructure, 3.3 university infrastructure, and 2 billion the University Hustlers Fund. Mr. Chairman, you had question 5, and you wanted a detailed list of the public participation projects affected by the budget rationalization. Mr. Chairman, the National Assembly approved Kenya shillings 2.3 billion for public participation projects under various ministries, departments, and agencies in the financial year 2024-25 budget estimates. Out of this amount, 1.5 billion has been rationalized, and the details are again in your folder as captured in Annex 2. You have question 6. You required a detailed list of the financial year 2023-2024 carryovers by each ministry, department, and agencies. Mr. Chairman, we closed the financial year 2023-2024 with carryovers amounting to 218.5 billion, and these are indicated on Table 6 in your folder at page 19. Now, Mr. Chairman, I think there are some indications of the highlights with the that Kenya has with the International Monetary Fund program. I'll try and go through them very briefly, and then if there are details, again the team is here to respond. But Mr. Chairman, I think I may want to flag one thing, that when we talk about the IMF, I think it's important for the Kenyan out there to know that we are members of this institution. We are also members of the World Bank. Because we tend to talk to them or talk of them as if they are aliens. But it is important for the Kenyan people to know that in simple language, we are subscribers or shareholders within these institutions. I think that's the simple language I would want to communicate to the Kenyan public, because we tend to talk of it as if we are not part of them and so forth, but it's important that this comes through. Now, the highlights are as follows. Mr. Chairman, we have just concluded the 7th review of our program with the IMF. Based on our preliminary assessment, we met the end June 2024 quantitative performance criteria, targets on net international reserves, basically including no new domestic guarantees and present value of contracting or guaranteeing of new external debt, and the continuous of ensuring that there are no new external payment arrears. So basically there were targets of various quantitative performance criteria, including, and you can see that, making sure that we minimize the accumulation of external arrears, which means the government of Kenya had to make sure it's paying promptly. We, however, did not meet the end June 2024 criteria on the primary budget balance and tax revenue, for which we have sought waiver based on commitment to pursue fiscal consolidation. And this is, of course, compounded by the fact that the Finance Act is now not there. So clearly, the issues around the projected tax revenues and so forth can no longer stand as they were. We had the other targets, which, Mr. Chairman, I think in the interest of time, maybe I'll just highlight they are technical in nature, but we had targets which maybe I can just focus in addition around the tax area. The main fiscal quantitative performance criteria targets for the financial year 2024-25 are 1 billion primary surplus of 240.2 billion ordinary revenue and 2.6 billion on tax revenue. In addition, we have the following indicative targets. We need to collect 2.3 billion, and we have to stop accumulation of pending bills. But this now will not be a reality as we go forward. We also have to minimize accumulation of exchequer requests, and we have to focus on spending priorities that have a proper impact socially. So, Mr. Chairman, the issues around the IMF, maybe look at paragraph 44, because the others are largely technical, and I'm trying to leave that to the committee to look at. The following benchmarks were not met and have now been rescheduled to be completed in the near term. 1, cabinet approval of strategy options for restructuring Kenya Airways by end of April. This was rescheduled to end July 2024. We also have to get cabinet approval and publication of an updated inventory and a new classification of state corporations that will apply across the government in line with the National Treasury strategy for improving financial oversight at state corporations document. You know, Mr. Chairman, as we deal with the state corporations, we make progress on one side and we have challenges on the other. For instance, the government publishes some guidelines on how to handle state corporations. Somebody runs to court and stops that, and yet those are very critical benchmarks also in helping the country come out of the challenges that we are facing. The National Treasury, amongst other things, is also supposed to submit to Parliament legal amendments to anchor the state corporation's ownership policy and other state-owned enterprise blueprint measures so that they can be put into law. We also have a situation where the National Treasury and Ministry of Energy need to provide and publish an assessment of the governance structure of the petroleum development entity. And Mr. Chairman, I want to say that in spite of all these challenges, the Treasury has had a very robust engagement with the International Monetary Fund, even in the midst of the challenges we've been facing. And the government has submitted for approval to the IMF Executive Board our program, our economic policies and programs, and we know that the IMF board will be meeting at the end of August 2024, and it is our desire and hope that Kenya's proposition will receive favorable consideration so that we can move beyond the challenges we are facing. Finally, Mr. Chairman, let me thank you once again for this opportunity to engage with you on the financial year 2024-25 supplementary estimates number 1. The National Treasury and Economic Planning is ready to provide any additional information, documentation required by the National Assembly to facilitate the approval of the financial year 2024-25 supplementary estimates. Thank you. I beg to end there for now.
Thank you very much, Prime Cabinet Secretary, His Excellency Musalia Mudavadi, for that very detailed presentation. I could see members were following in the files, and I am sure they have a lot of issues they would want some engagement with you. But I would request members, before we proceed, that I give the PS, Dr. Kipto, a chance also to say something around the issues that we are discussing on the economy and where we are as a country, and especially given the situations that we are facing.
Thank you, Chair and honorable members. Just to add to what the the Prime Cabinet Secretary has read, who is also acting as my Cabinet Secretary. Just want to say that there's been good progress on the macroeconomic front since we settled the Eurobond in February with an issuance and a buyback of 1.5 billion. And we have been able to stabilize the shilling as read by the Cabinet Secretary. Now the shilling is at around 129, 130. And we have seen inflation decline by 5% from 9.6 in October 2022 to now around 4.6. And that means cost of living has in a big way also been tackled, because food inflation and fuel inflation is now declined in a big way. And that stability in the foreign exchange market has also demonstrated in Kenya. Participation of investors at the stock exchange. So far, from a macro front, especially on inflation and the exchange rate, I think it's good. Of course, interest rates remain high, and that is also driven more by the fiscal front, where we have not been able to collect enough revenues as planned. We crossed the year with 220 billion exchequer requests, which we could not pay because what KRA collected was not enough. And that includes what we have carried over in the budget, the CDF of 13.5 billion. It also includes for counties about 31 billion, and for pension around 31 billion, which has been reduced to around 26 billion now. So I think you will see that in the budget policy statement which we issued for public participation, our expenditure was 4.2 trillion, but which we worked very hard to try and reduce that to 3.992, which is the budget we submitted end of the year. So there was already a cut of over 200 billion, which is why when you look at the cut, that table that Prime CS showed you on expenditure cuts, you will see, for instance, communication supplies and services is now being cut only by 20%. It's not because we are leaving out this. It's because the earlier cuts had affected more on domestic travel, foreign travel, and other recurrent expenditure which we found necessary. But even with having cut that budget to 3.992, the failure to assent to the finance bill by the president meant that we had to cut back again the expenditure. The instructions we had, if you listen to the president that time when he did not assent, was that we cut the budget by the equivalent of what we did not realize in the finance bill. But having gone through, we of course had to do what the Prime Cabinet Secretary has indicated. We had to set aside some of the critical items, what are important for this government, as tabulated already in the list that was given. And we were able to ring fence up to 165 billion exemptions, as you see on page 4. And but this is a big cut of development. And I have been receiving calls from my colleagues, accounting officers, virtually everybody complaining of huge budget cuts. I have never seen this. It is unprecedented. It's a place, as a technical person at the National Treasury, I wouldn't like Kenya to be in. I seek that we find ways to get out of this quickly, to get back to normalcy. Because with so many contracts already in place, and you don't allocate budget, it means we'll have challenges of contractual obligations, potential litigation in court, and that is not good for us. It is important we provide the budget, and the fact that we don't have also money being spent by government, it means liquidity in the market will decline, and all the gains we have achieved are likely to be undermined. So I wanted just to say it has been a good opportunity for us at National Treasury to, this crisis has helped us to look at the expenditure side and address on a permanent basis some of the areas we feel could have been areas of waste. But I think the pendulum has swung too much, to the extent that I think we have cut to almost everyone and is unable to perform. So the solution could have been more expenditure cuts. But if you look at what you have there, if you do some maths, we have a budget of 3.83 trillion. Is it 3.87 trillion, out of which recurrent is 2.8. Of that 2.8 trillion of recurrent, what we call CFS, Consolidated Fund Services, is 1.2 trillion. And if you take the revenues that are estimated in what you see there of ordinary revenue of 2.6 trillion, it means we are spending 45% of the revenues we get from KRA to just pay interest for loans that we have taken, and a bit on, if you isolate the pension, actually we are saying for every 4 shillings we are getting from KRA, we are spending to pay debt. So one of our biggest problems is the stock of debt that we have, which is piling up, because in the fiscal framework, the assumption is that you keep rolling over on the domestic debt, even when you pay interest payment. We have just settled now, today, we have paid 60, how much is it? 74 billion shillings that we have paid out of the revenues we had to accumulate to settle the Chinese debt. This month, and no, actually today is when we were paying off to settle the Chinese debt of 56 billion. And you can get other details for the rest of that make up to 74 billion. So debt is what has taken huge amount, and this explains why with less areas of expenditure, especially on recurrent, where we can't cut recurrent, and then development, you have seen how much you have done, then you have debt that piles up. The only way to grow our economy is to try and work on the revenue side, which is why there's been a lot of effort to push KRA to raise more money, tax money. And we are also working on non-tax revenue. And this debate, especially on finance bill, I think also is going to help Kenyans to now understand, because it seems to be there's always confusion between an appropriation bill and a finance bill, so that when we present a budget and you have a finance bill, one might want to say we don't need a finance bill. We needed the additional revenue because this year is different from last year. The children who have gone to school this year are more, so we're required to give more money to the children who have gone to school, and other needs because of the increase in population. So I think what I will only plead is we need to find ways to get back quickly so that we collect the revenues that we require so that our country can move in a normal way and we do well like the other countries, because I think we are a work in progress as a country, and we are a great country, potential, with a lot of resilience. Even with the challenges we have, we still are growing. Our growth is now 5.6, and despite all the challenges, if we only brought in the normalcy, I think we will do well. So on the side, under the CS and others, we are pushing KRA on tax administration. You have seen we have also extended the tax amnesty, which will give us a revenue of about 30 billion. We have RMLF, which now we are saying it should come to Exchequer, because this is important to support the revenues for us. And then we have done a lot of SOE reforms, which we expect to raise to reduce the expenditure by about 7.3 billion. And all these are important reforms that require the support of Kenyans. So maybe I'll stop here for now, and it is my wish and the wish of us in Treasury colleagues that we have Kenyans support the process of budget making and the collection of revenues as required. We have also learned our lessons, and we will do more engagement. We will improve our communication. I think we have agreed we'll do regular updates every maybe 1 month or 2 months, where we inform the nation on where we are on many areas of economic activity, and probably also do more. I think we are telling KRA to do more education and awareness so that people see what the value for paying taxes. And I think Kenyans are right when they ask how their money is being used. That's a legitimate question. And we encourage Parliament and everybody to ask us of how we have used the money. But let us get the revenues required for us to run the budget for the nation. Thank you very much.
Members, I know there is a lot of interest. What we'll do is we'll take the first round of 5 members. Then the National Treasury answers. Then we continue like that. And then on the team of the National Treasury, we request that you note them down so that we answer them in wholesale. One, let me start from here. Over the last 3 days, we have noted also something that should be corrected. And by the way, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, most of the issues you'll hear from these members, they are generally to enrich. We've had a lot of questions also asking ourselves on how to improve our economy, and therefore whatever things you are going to hear, some are actually opinions as much as they are also answers, they are questions, because you also want to be a part of the solution. And in that regard, you realize Kenya being the informal economy it is, I mean a lot of activities happening informally, then there is a lot of levies and fees to collect beyond the taxes in terms of targets. And we have noted one thing that is very peculiar, which the National Treasury should take note of. Now that there is a squeeze in terms of exchequer, almost all the other departmental committees with sagas below them, all of them are requesting for enhancement of A&A. Enhancement of A&A meaning they are just requesting for them to be allowed to spend more. Meaning there is a lot of space in that area. Look, for example, tourism fund, tourism promotion fund. This report indicates our tourism numbers have risen by close to 30%. But then there is nothing commensurate to show that the A&A being gotten from this enhancement in tourism, that this money is going into helping some of the problems that we have. And our advice as the committee is this: A&A must stop being the preserve of the collector. This is public money. Whether you call it sports fund, whether you call it tourism promotion fund, whether you call it tourism fund, these are Kenyans' money. Because then we have seen some kind of empire building, where because you have collected A&A, you want to look for expenditure to utilize that A&A. Treasury must initiate at this process, taking care of the current situation you are in. You must initiate changes in law. I know it's our work, but also you know what to do as a National Treasury. We open up the fund of tourism. We open up a sports fund. We open up all the other funds, including the one for CA, that this money cannot continue to be constrained to be used for specific purposes. SOEs is the same. The only detail we have as a committee is transfer to this agency. But the truth of the matter is that PSN, you know, civil servants in Kenya are not the problem when it comes to recurrent expenditure. The problem is neither the people seated in this hall. They could be, but they are a little problem. The bigger problem is SOEs, state-owned enterprises and parastatus. We must find a way of getting the fresh out. Just the same way everyone has gotten a haircut, it cannot continue being that the budget making process, so to say, of Kenya Pipeline, of Kenya Post Authority, of all the other cash-rich agencies, that the board, that it stops with the board. It cannot continue to be like that. And I want you to check something called IRA, Insurance Regulatory Authority. And if it's possible, because it lies at the National Treasury, tell us how much is the money an employee per, I mean, how much money is allocated per employee in that agency, for example. How much surplus do they remit to the National Treasury? So that we continue now providing a solution to the lack of money by first of all taking the money that is low-lying fruit. Second thing is I want you to tell this committee also, PS, whether we are within the constitutional threshold when it comes to development expenditure and the entire budget. What it is provided in the law, whether we are within. The other thing is public participation projects. As the National Treasury, you are aware, that is usually non-negotiable. Because Kenyans have already proposed these projects, they are waiting for them, and therefore the haircut of 1.5 billion cannot be permitted. And therefore, before you leave, please identify for us whether we are cutting from the National Treasury or whichever other place, because this money has to be availed today. And lastly, taxes. If you have this, you can give us an answer. Kenya, I have said before, most of our activities are informal. How many Kenyans pay taxes? Vis-a-vis, so if you have the number, how many Kenyans are working? What is the working population in Kenya? And number two, how many of those pay taxes? Let me go to Honorable Vice Chair first.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just appreciate His Excellency Prime Cabinet Secretary and your team for a very good job. I have a few concerns. Let me go straight to the first one. And I think before I say that, I must say this is a very healthy conversation, Chair. And this revision of the budget and the submissions from National Treasury goes forward to allay the fears that the finance bill was still alive, the finance bill of 2024-25. So this is a confirmation that that finance bill is dead. That is why we are here revising the budget. My first one is on the impact of winding up the 47 SOEs. It's a good thing. We've saved 7.3, and I believe going forward we will save even more. But my concern is this. We've looked at some of these 47 SOEs in our various departmental committees. Some of them, their allocation have been reduced to 0. And now my concern is, whereas we're trying to save, cut down, you know, we're looking for to create more jobs, we also need to protect the existing ones. So what has the National Treasury, what are the plans? Are you designating these employees? Are you sending them to other departments? I think it would be good to know, because there's 0 allocation. Case in point is Kenya Academies of Sports. My second concern is on pending bills. You say the policy direction is no further accumulation of pending bills. But now we are wondering, how will this be possible, given that some of the deductions are on development expenditure? Reductions affecting ongoing projects, some with certificates. And you've just alluded to the fact that there would even be more consequences in terms of the legal impacts arising from that. So meaning our pending bills actually will increase. So how shall we be looking at that? And my third one is on, you said our growth rate is expected to remain resilient at 5.5. Now, given the reductions on development, also looking at the impacts on the services sector occasioned by the demonstrations, the crowding effect leading to increase in interest rates as a result of domestic borrowing that we're looking forward to, and many other factors, do you still think that the growth rate will hold at 5.5? 5% going to the future. And finally, we're talking about austerity measures. You have elaborated on all these initiatives and policy directions, but you've not touched on corruption, because that is one area would save a lot of money. What are the plans? What are the strategies? How are we going to net in on corruption so that we make further savings? Thank you.
Let me go to Honorable Mayor Masara.
Thank you. First, I want to congratulate the Prime Cabinet Secretary that you have broken the record to be acting minister in almost 22 institutions. I think nobody will ever break that. Congratulations once again. And I want to remind you, I'm married at your place, so when you are writing your CV as the person who has broken the record, you remember Masara there. I wanted people to laugh because we are in interesting times. Things are very tough. My concern, first I want to appreciate how you have presented the document, because it has enriched the mind of the Kenyans on the happenings, the current happenings, more so on the issue of finance bill and the budget process. I want only to invest much of our time on the carryovers. Kindly let the committee know that these carryovers, more so the ones for developments, for counties, were they for development or recurrent? Because if they were for development, some of which are going to attract what is called penalties. So kindly furnish us with that information. And then part of the carryovers, let us know if there were already payment certificate issued, because that one, as the Vice Chairman has said, will also increase the issue of the interest rates. My another concern is the issue of corruption. You have not mentioned as a Treasury what you are going to do, but we don't have official communication. But the former president mentioned the money we were losing per day on corruption. You remember? If we can shield those loopholes, it means that money we are losing, we can get it instead of taxing Kenyans. Another issue is you have not talked about auditing the public debts, because we are complaining about the interest we pay on public debts. But if you ask any Kenyan, including the technocrats, we don't know where this money were taken. Particularly if you want now audit, this borrowing was done in this country, it was meant for a particular project. Did that project stimulate the economy? Or is that project completed, or is it existing? We don't have such a records. And finally, you have talked of winding up over 47 parastatals. I believe they were having recurrent expenditure. Now that they are not going to be there, you have not mentioned the amount which used to be allocated to this parastatal, of which now you are not going to allocate. Because we are looking for ways of ensuring that our budget is financed. So we must go for other areas where you are forgotten. And then finally, on the current development project you are projecting to do in this financial year, are they going to stimulate the economy so that the economy can grow, or there are some are political, which are going to be white elephant, but the public money is going to be spent? Thank you.
Honorable Daktari, Secretary General.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for the clear and precise presentation. I have one or two issues to raise. One, when you look at the areas where budget cuts have been effected, like in the area of electricity and in public facilities, that is the last mile, water and sanitation, roads, school infrastructure, and even construction of TVETs. Actually, the moment you remove money from these areas, you can easily ground the country. And so, in my proposal, why can't we have budget cuts focusing on recurrent expenditure and operations more than in the area of development? so that we raise money for development by effecting budget cuts in the area of operation. For example, there are so many areas like the mergers of parastatals, as has been said, austerity measures in various ministries that are duplicating each other. We've been in this budget committee and we've seen, for example, the commission on Nairobi River being implemented by 3 ministries, and each of them is bringing a budget here for implementing the same thing. I don't know whether you've been able to identify those duplication of roles so that we can remove money and rechannel this money in this area. And so we can be able to raise money if we are serious. The other thing is, apart from just the normal budget presentations, has the ministry done a 3-5-year projection on austerity measures and say, within the next 4-5 years, if we actually delve into austerity measures properly, we can raise this amount and channel it to development. Finally, what is the impact of the pending bills of 2023-2024 financial year to the 2024-2025 budget? What is the fate of this carryover? Thank you, Chairman.
Let me go to Honorable Miri Mabona.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to thank the Cabinet Secretary and the entire Treasury for a good presentation. And Chair, I just want to say that I support the budget cuts, and even though that I think we can reduce even further. I think I'm not saying just because of what is happening here. I have actually said it before in this committee, because we need to be very realistic in the way we do our budgeting. I saw a comment by one of the Gen Zs that was actually equating our national budget to our own family budgets. And if you have only 10,000 Kenya shillings and you need to do food, buy food and buy shoes, you can't do shoes and then leave food. But the way we have been budgeting is actually the opposite. We are buying shoes and leaving food. And when we do that, then there is pressure for us to increase revenue and hence the finance, infamous finance bill. So for me, it's very important that we are more realistic, because we create an artificial need for revenue when we can actually budget as a country within our means. I know we have blamed the IMFs and all, and I'm sure they are doing wrong. But first, let us point fingers at ourselves before we point fingers even at the IMF, because there are things we can do at home that don't need to put those kind of pressure on us. Chair, the only thing, other thing I wanted to indicate is that I've seen that the Treasury has indicated areas where they need the cuts, but without premising them on certain principles. And that's why Daktari is actually going back to leave this and that. If you want to be very fair, it's always good to move on principles. And for me, one, which I've again said several in this committee, is there equity? One, in the cuts. And secondly, not only just in the cuts, but in the spreading out of the little, since we are going on austerity measures. And the Chair, I don't want to be selfish, but this is a very skeletal document, which, and if with the documents that you have on cuts, yeah, they are about from page 1 to page 9, yeah. If you are looking at the estimates, the printed estimates, they are like this voluminous, they are that big. What is the possibility that 2 projects in my constituency, for instance, would be here? That shows lack of equity. I don't mind programs in my constituency being removed for us to deal with the issues of austerity now and to deal with the crisis in the country, but there must be equity, both in cuts and also in spreading out what is remaining. Secondly, we must look at or preserve the pro-people project, the one that reaches people directly, especially Gen Zs, in terms of job creation, but also in terms of training. So if you are removing the ones that are reaching them, but we are retaining some which may not have that sort of value, it doesn't help. Then third, projects that can stimulate the economy. And Chair, for instance, there are some construction, there are ongoing constructions which you don't need. I know there are many we've removed, but there are some that I've actually seen that are there. Again, consolidating roles is another. Unfortunately, one of the areas I've seen is an area I'm very passionate about, so I will not say it, I will not mention it, but it's an area I'm very passionate about. But they have 3 different agencies doing one thing. It's a lot of wastage. And if you are serious, and that's what part of the conditionalities I think that IMF has given us, but we are going round and round like we are not able to. Again, Chair, the issue of public participation. Because we went to the public, they told us where the issue is pinching, let's not remove that. And finally, Chair, on a light note, I can, you have told us that the demonstrations are keeping tourists away. But I actually think it's the opposite. If you can actually do away with the police beating demonstrators and the goons that are somehow infused, why? Because Ugandans will come here, Nigerians will come to see our Gen Zs are actually demonstrating with style, you know. They are good, they dance, they do no peaceful, no distraction, so we can actually use it to bring more tourists. So just be nice to the Gen Zs. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Chris Aseka, member for Quisero.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, PCS, and I want to declare some interest. PCS is my political father. We only parted ways when he declared an earthquake.
So umeharibika afterwards?
No, when he declared an earthquake, I thought maybe it would bring down the whole world. I didn't know that it was a political earthquake. But it's good to know that he's brought me up in politics. I have to. I may not be an authority in economics, but I think the technical people from Treasury are. When you reduce a budget by a whopping 138 billion from development expenditures, what it means that you are reducing economic activities in the economy. The net effect is that the collections will be down and the economy will not grow. The PS has alluded to them, but I don't know if the PS interacted with this document before it was brought to the National Assembly. 2, when you reduce domestic travels, it means you are affecting service industry in the entire country. The net effect is that the economy will not grow. I agree with my Vice Chair. How do you expect to grow this economy by 5.5%? 2, you have indicated that you are trying to encourage direct foreign investment in this country. We've had reports that many investors are fleeing out of Kenya to our neighboring countries. What could be the reasons? And from where you see Treasury, is there a strategy you've put in place to really attract this direct foreign investment? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable David Ochieng.
Chair, thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much, PCS and the PS Treasury. Got a couple of questions. The first one is, Chair, the finance bill that everyone keeps talking about, where did it come from? Treasury or State House? What is your role in it? Because everyone's trying to wash their hands off it. It now became Parliament's baby. And there are things there that were brought in the last Finance Act as remedies to situations that we had at that time. Well, for example, we reduced taxation on cooking oil. We were proposing to increase it in this budget. We reduced, in the finance bill, we reduced the price of bread. We were all of a sudden increasing it. The motor vehicle tax, and all these things. Where did these proposals come from? Because it is the elephant in the room. The last financial year, 2023-24, the finance bill was quite top heavy. And we were told that if you just pass this finance bill, if you just allow this housing levy and all these things, they will have revenues. But the reports we are now getting is that the returns from the 2023-2024 Finance Act are not what we projected. What went wrong? Why are we not able to harness the gains we made in the Finance Act 23-24? Number two, the KRA reforms. Because, Chair, as you would know, and we've been told, this is not conjecture, there are KRA staff who are running mini KRAs. We've been told through the media so many times the fact that the KRA could actually collect more than what they are collecting now by half, meaning they could collect 1.5 of what they're collecting now. Why must we mix KRA reforms with the finance bill? Why can't we just pick out the reforms we need to work on KRA? If it is corruption, if it is systems, if it is the people. Because we are losing money in that regard. I personally believe, and I still believe to date, we did not need a finance bill this financial year. If we had done the reforms we required, the finance bill of this year would have been reducing the burden on Kenyans. Because you told us very clearly last year that this is the silver bullet. Chair, our fiscal policy environment and framework, in the last 18 months, 24 months, we seem to be playing ping pong with the economic policy. No one knows whether next year we'll have another tax hikes on areas that promote investments. There's no certainty. There's no predictability. How do we convince people to come into this market if next year again we'll have the kind of thing happening today? People going to the streets because the gains we've made in the previous finance acts and finance bills are being eroded by doing the right things we should be doing. Chair, I would like to know how the Treasury is working with the Office of the Auditor General. Because that office has flagged so many things the last 1 year. The areas where you're losing money in the counties at the national government level. Issues of accountability by CDF committees in the constituencies, the various ministries and the parastatals. What is being done to ensure that that is available is being used the right way, so that the measures we are now proposing, the austerity measures we are now proposing, are able to make us have some gains in that. And finally, just following up on what the Honorable Millie has said, in these cuts, and I say this is a very heavy cut, a very heavy hat, in these cuts, there is almost a clear pattern that in the cuts you're making, the MPs who voted no are being targeted in their constituencies. What do you have to say about that? Thank you.
Let me go to Honorable Ruth. I was almost saying AU, but I realized. I read something that something is happening.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Treasury, and especially our Prime Cabinet Secretary, who is somebody I know very well, very good friend. I'm happy to have this opportunity to at least ask a few questions. First of all, what I would like to say is how sincere are we with this kind of budget cuts? For me, these budget cuts I see are mostly targeting actually the common mwananchi. Because when you look at it, you talk about maintaining affordable housing. Yet, we are having cuts on TVETs. And mainly these TVETs were there to help support our young people to go to these colleges to be able to work within this affordable housing that we were saying. When you look at the pending, when you say you have cuts on some of the development projects, which means we are going to increase even the pending bills. that we have. And those pending bills, really, as I'm speaking to you right now, contractors are really suffering. Not only in the national government projects, but even the county governments, because they're not being paid. And now there's these measures of maybe having even extra pending bills because of these cuts that you're actually bringing up. What are we going to do? Because how was it informed? Within this short period, have you looked? When I look at it, there are projects that are there that were under public participation of areas that had floods. And these floods, we are saying we want gambions. We want the flood mitigations to be done. And you're cutting those mercilessly across. Yet we are going to still have the floods next year. Or have we done something on climate change? Yeah? So basically, I know we are saying we want to do these cuts. And when you also look at it, we already had been complaining even in Parliament about equity. Yes, there were areas that were not having any development projects or anything. Now that you're going to cut, does it mean that these places that didn't even have these projects are going to be cut further? Or like my colleague Millie Odhiambo said, there's going to be some equity and fair distribution of this cut across the whole country? Because I am sure that when I look at the list that we even have here on the public participation, it looks like mostly the areas that comes from the people who you are saying, for example, are supporting Gen Z or that said no of corruption. Because without that issue of corruption, and yet the PS, you're still alluding to the idea that people should be taxed. I did know the people are not saying that they shouldn't be taxed. They're just saying don't overtax, because when you overtax, people don't give you tax anymore. They actually avoid giving that tax. So the issue is not that people don't want to pay tax, but don't look at revenue collection only as tax-based and putting higher taxes on the people. Asante sana. My last question, sorry. On the road maintenance levy, which will generate about 32 billion, will this go to the exchequer or is it going to the roads board?
Thank you very much.
I would like to have that answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ruth. Members, I'm not trying to control for us to comment, but to be very fair, because we've been sitting here for 4 days. We have project lists from all MDAs. In my opinion, we can take this debate in a different mode, because the housing was here in the morning, we had the list, so that we don't concentrate on one side, then we leave out very important issues which we need to engage with. Because looking at the issues where the money has been cut, that is number 5. Rectification, we know it was all constituencies. Roads project, GK actually was very forthright to come with a whole list. It was cutting across. So I'm just requesting so that we are able to give this session the weight it deserves by dealing with the issues that cuts across all the people of Kenya. If you allow, we take 3 more, they respond, then another round. Let me start with the Bishop's daughter.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, the Prime Cabinet Secretary and the team from Treasury for your presentation. And I'm also happy that you're before this committee, not just as the acting CS Treasury, but also as the one who is charged with the responsibility of coordination and supervision of government and the state departments. Because it will be very important after we pass this supplementary budget to actually follow up as the supervisor of the ministries whether they are doing the right thing. My question is this. My colleagues have talked about corruption, but I want to go further and say the Auditor General is doing a very good job under the circumstances as an office. Every quarter or every year, we have audit reports of how different government entities are spending their monies. I want to ask whether as a government we are taking keen interest on the audit reports or there are just other reports, and what actions are being done. Because as we talk about budget cuts, we have to talk about corruption and wastage as one of the things that has brought us to where we are. So I wanted to ask about the audit reports, or they're just reports, both from the counties, parliament, judiciary, all the way to the executive. The second thing that I wanted to raise is the issue of recurrent. It is good that you have stated how much money is being rationalized in the recurrent budget. We did for Parliament this morning under PAC, Judiciary has done, and there is always a perception that there is a lot more at the executive in terms of recurrent. The beautiful flowers we see, the teas, they could be minimal, but it counts for something. The travel in these parastatals all over, people traveling for an essential. There are meetings which are essential where the country position maybe has to go and be represented, but just travel, even as members of Parliament, we've ceded ground and we've said it's something that should be considered. So at the executive level, has that been really taken care of at the recurrent? And lastly, as you do your supervision, Kenyans are so keen. Please do not commit anything here in front of us and in front of Kenyans. And then, chini ya maji, people are still traveling, people are still doing the same things you have committed here, that it won't happen. They will be so keen to follow up to see that it is actually happening in those ministries and departments. To my second last issue, an issue like NHIF, do we need to still move to SHIF, or you do reforms in NHIF? Because there are costs that will be incurred as you move to SHIF. Can we just do reforms of NHIF? Because the majority of it was working. So can we just, improve and make the reforms that we need at NHIF? The issue of communication, you have stated rightly. KRA and Treasury, you need to work on your communication in a language that Kenyans understand. Why we need to raise, why the taxes need to be raised in a certain manner, and as you're considerate also to Kenyans, but your communication is key. And finally, I don't understand why the president has 10 or 8 advisors on economics, and then Treasury is doing its own things at Treasury. Then some of your advisors are talking like they are not in the same government. They are even talking against you, Treasury. And you're wondering, are you working together? Are you, there could be a challenge and a problem between the advisors and Treasury, because I thought the main key person to advise the president on issues to do with economics is the cabinet secretary responsible with Treasury. Now you have some people who sit in air-conditioned offices who don't understand what Kenyans are going through, and then they are just talking in cross-purpose communication. And maybe that is where the big challenge in terms of Treasury and even the president, the issue is going. So as I conclude on the taxes, also you said Kenyans are resilient. Kenyans are resilient. They can even be looking for ways to circumvent paying taxes. That you think we are resilient, but the more you continue taxing us, and that is why the raising of taxes is not commensurate to how much we are getting, because Kenyans are just looking for ways of surviving under the tough circumstances. So we need to get a way to communicate and convince them why they should pay taxes and why they get value for the money of it. And as you tell us about the debts and everything, I think that should be public information. Audit your debts, tell us where we are so that we understand and we move together. Don't just be telling us every other time we have loans to pay. Kenyans are asking which loans, what were they for, did we get value for money, and how much are we paying? Do for us simple, and we will understand and work with you.
Honorable Mashako.
Thank you, Chair. I like first to commend the National Treasury and the PCS for a good presentation. Chair, I have about 2 or 3 questions. One is, we know we have a very good tax policy that I think was launched last year. I just wanted to know from Treasury how that tax policy is influencing or is guiding the decisions to either tax Kenyans more or reduce the burden of taxation, or how is it informing even the finance bill that we had just recently. Why I say that, Chair, when Chair of Finance and Economic Planning Kimani Kuria came before this committee, he indicated that he wanted some budget under Treasury and KRA that will allow a study be done to show now the sensitivity of either higher taxes on revenue collection. And I would really want to know whether this has been done in the past, or it is time that Treasury is waking up to realizing that more taxation does not necessarily mean additional revenue to the country. Because if that is the case, then we want to see that future finance bills or future any attempt to tax Kenyans more may lead to a justification around a study that has been conducted, so that we are sure any additional tax burden will generate additional revenue. Because we know for a fact that last year, fuel levy, when we introduced taxes on fuel, we didn't raise enough revenue as anticipated. Tied to that, Chair, is that we have raised fuel levy from 18 to 25. And I just wanted to know, and a colleague of mine mentioned this, do we have a framework? Which laws are we going to use so that then the money that we raise under a road maintenance levy fund would be used to fund our budget? Because there's an indication that that money that will be raised will help reduce will help fund the budget that we have today. Second, Chair, most of the departmental committees that have come before us have indicated that the departments and ministries they oversight are complaining that you have cut, not that they are complaining that you have cut their budgets, but they're complaining that you've cut so much, including employees, salaries and benefits, PE, personal emoluments. So I just wanted to hear from Treasury, when you cut across, are there departments that you feel you need to reinstate their PEs? I want to give you two examples. One is Kenya Film Board, that you've cut 55% of their, their personnel emoluments. Go to CDA, Coast Development Authority. You've equally cut, 122 million shillings. That they're indicating that that part of that, 65 million of that, is purely salaries and allowances. Then, allow me to say this, Chair, as a last comment, that as we look at auditing loans, public debt, I think it's important as a country, we also include auditing budgets, including this year's budget, to understand how balanced we are trying to cover the country. By balance, I mean how skewed our budgets are. Because we look at the documents that have been presented before this budget committee, including projects that we see being done. You go to a county, you have 4 or 5 roads, yes, that are ongoing. You go to another county, no road, or only one. So I'm thinking of a situation whereby Treasury and maybe the government should institute a full audit of our budgets, maybe going back 5 years, to see where have you marginalized this country even more, where have you sent more money for, where have you, where has been the bias. So then as you move forward, we start a new Kenya that every part of this country benefits from these 3 and 4 trillion budgets. Thank you, Chair.
Members, let's please give the National Treasury some time to respond, then we take the last round. Karibu sana, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Your Excellency, you may answer the ones you want, but you are free also to designate to your team.
Yes, I'm sure they were listening very clearly, and I will go by your advice. Maybe I'll make my comments to touch on a little bit of what might be political concerns, and then the issue of some of the technical areas. My PS and his team can intervene on the various points. The first one, Mr. Chairman, it would be very bad policy if we tried to do cuts on the basis of how a member of parliament votes. That would be absolutely wrong, and I want to assure you that that is not to be anything that we want to adopt as a government. All Kenyans are taxpayers, and when they are in parliament, whether they vote yes or no, their performing their constitutional and civic obligations, and therefore they cannot become victims of any penalization. So if there's any such thought, I would want to reassure the members that we will not subscribe to that. All Kenyans have a right, they're all taxpayers, and that is why we are here, so that we can look at our proposals. Mr. Chairman, I want to go further and commit that after we have finished with this presentation, in order to show that we have nothing to hide, the PS and his team are going to make sure that this document that we have used to make a presentation is made available to all the media houses. But beyond that, I actually advise that the Treasury buys space so that there's no distortion. I think the Treasury, and this is what we are going to do, we will buy space and have this document in all the leading papers of this country, so that there is no deletion of a comma, no hiding of anything, so that Kenyans can see for themselves what it is, as it is. This is a very important thing, because sometimes the communication is distorted and the facts are not laid out to the people. So we want to undertake to do that particular item. Let me touch very quickly on the issue around SHIF and NHIF. I believe Parliament has already pronounced itself on these particular items. I think the law regarding the social health insurance fund is in place. And the one on NHIF was repealed. Mr. Chairman, am I right? Yes. So I think what is important, we take into account what were the positives around the NHIF, and with the law that is in place, we then accelerate the process of ensuring that the targets or the objective of achieving universal health care is achieved, so that all Kenyans who deserve medical care can have their needs attended to under the social health insurance fund. And that is something that we are going to do. We've had a little bit of hiccups of people moving to court and slowing down the process. Sometimes, the truth be told, sometimes these interventions by people raising petitions to court are genuine. And sometimes they are petitions that sometimes are designed perhaps to slow down a process. But legally, we still have to address those when they are in court, and then we move ahead. So that is something that is moving. I want to also be able to state that on matters of tax policy, and I think KRA is in this room, they will be able to elaborate a little bit on matters tax policy. I think Mashako has spoken quite broadly on that. What I can only say is that tax policy and tax reform is continuous. There's a program that Treasury runs so that they have to continually look at the tax structure and the efficiency of the methods that have been employed and review them from time to time. Going back into history, if I may just give a quick example, because I was at the center of it when I was officially at the Treasury at that time. we moved away from the income tax department, the customs department, and so forth, and created the KRA. And then the KRA became the first stage of reform moving forward. And maybe on a humorous note, one of the most interesting areas is that digitization that was being introduced was the famous PIN number. And there was so much resistance from Kenyans on this PIN number. They called it the number of the devil. Even it was being preached in churches by very prominent bishops that this is the number of the devil, that you're going to be identified by the number. But this was a strategy maybe conceived by people who want to evade tax to try and stop you in the tracks so that you cannot digitize and you cannot reform because the tax news will get closer to them. So even as we look at what we are going through in terms of tax policy, as we tighten the news, as efficiency, as digitization improves, you will find still there'll be elements who will want to resist, because where they were evading before, with digitization and modernization, you find that the door or the window is closing on some of them. So these are things that we would have to anticipate. I think the issue of the debts, I just want to say that there is a debt register actually at the Treasury, and I think you'll want to speak to it, which is public, and it gives details of who do we owe. It is there. I think what the members are looking at is the issue of creating the forensic audit around the debt profile, and to see whether we got value for money at the end of the day. That is a valid issue, but we have to do it procedurally, because it is important that, because constitutionally it's the Auditor General who can audit all government accounts. And therefore, if we want to have that forensic audit, it has to be channeled through the Office of the Auditor General. And if for some reason the Office of the Auditor General is unable to do it, maybe because of being overstretched, it is the Office of the Auditor General that can recommend the appointment of an audit firm to conduct such a forensic audit. That is how the procedure should be. And I believe this is something that we have not lost. It is something that can be picked up and taken up in the right direction. In part of the issues that we want to look at is we agree that there must be a better strategy around implementation of the findings of the audit reports. This has been an area of weakness, especially when it comes to tackling matters corruption. And this cascades not just at the national government level, but it cascades to the county governments, and it even cascades to the state enterprises. This is something that I think as a strategy of tackling corruption, I can only say that Parliament and the executive will need to work very closely together so that we can have a better strategy around implementation of audit reports. The issue of pending bills, this is a thorn in the flesh, and you have raised very valid questions. I will leave that to our technical people, because a committee to look at pending bills was set up by government, and about 70% of the 600 billion plus Kenya shillings of pending bills is primarily domiciled with the state corporations. They have even more in terms of pending bills than the national government itself. So that is an area where the committee that was set up has made some preliminary findings, and I'm sure the PS Treasury will be able to say something towards that. On a broad scale, it is true when government does not spend, as Honorable Aseka did indicate, economic activity is subdued. So we are alive to the fact that we need to take urgent measures and quick corrective action so that the government does not lose the momentum that it had gained in process of trying to get the economy back on the recovery path. So that is a reality. But I want to tell members that we have really cut to the bone. We have cut to the bone. The negative side of the tax, when you don't have tax, then your only recourse now becomes cutting expenditure. So we are trying to do a very delicate balance between not living without the Finance Act, but also trying to figure out how the government can still have its operations with the bare minimum. I want to say that the Finance Act, to Honorable David Ucheng, this was an act generated by the executive. And I think the executive has taken full responsibility. That is the government of Kenya. They've taken full responsibility that this was their way of trying to help in graduating the country from high dependency on borrowed money to improving our local capacity to generate revenue. But the Kenyan citizens had a different position on this matter. So we have to step back and retrace our steps. But it's also important for Kenyans to note that somewhere along the line, not necessarily now, as the population grows, as needs of citizens grow and so forth, and as we look forward to moving away from high debt dependency, it will be important that going forward, we appreciate that there will be need to have increased revenues from time to time. But it's a question of whether we can have proper public participation at every level so that everybody understands why we are looking for that extra resource, and then we deal with it. There are issues of corruption which are valid, and I know broadly in the program that we want to pursue, part of issues even around tax modernization and sealing of loopholes, it's all an attempt to make sure that we can minimize aspects of tax evasion, for instance. We want to look critically at procurement, because procurement, ladies and gentlemen, is the fulcrum of corruption. That is where it all stems from. And we are in the process through Treasury, and some may require amendments that will come to the floor of the House, that the aspects around procurement be relooked at, be digitized, so that there is minimal contact between individuals. We want to appeal that this House will be, you passed the conflict of conflict of interest bill. I think that was very, very important. Of course, Senate has had its bite at the cherry, and then it will go to the President. But what is important is that those are some of the kind of legislation that are so critical. And I think we will owe it to Kenyans to make sure that we do not mutilate that bill, so that aspects around conflict of interest can also be dealt with, because this is, as I said, it becomes a fulcrum on matters corruption. So that is perhaps another example. I think going forward, we may have to look critically at areas like what is the Criminal Procedure Act, the Evidence Act, insofar as matters or the laws around corruption are related. Because as things stand now, whether you stole a tire from a car, or whether you are involved in mega corruption, the process through our legal framework is such that a criminal offense follows the normal same procedure. And this is why you find that some cases that are so significant in terms of corruption are dragged in our courts over a period of time. So these, Mr. Chairman, are issues that I can assure you the government is looking at very, very seriously, and we intend to be able to bring this up. The Budget Committee has raised some very fundamental issues about certainty, predictability, and I think these are valid points to be taken on board, because it is true, a finance bill does not necessarily have to be every year. We could focus on introducing a finance bill or an act that spans over a 3-year period, or a 24-month period. That is a 2-year. So these are issues that I think the technocrats at the Treasury can look at very, very carefully, so that we can move forward. On the state-owned enterprises, let me say very quickly that this has been a very difficult thing to deal with, because we tend to personalize some of these state enterprises, either in the form of our regions or other aspects. And I think what the young people are telling us is that let us look at things holistically, so that if we have to rationalize some of these state enterprises, let us not become sentimental about them. If we know very well that they are a drain on the exchequer, they are just drawing money from the exchequer, and they are delivering very little. Because to the best of my knowledge, state-owned enterprises were not set up just to become salary-paying entities. They were set up with a specific purpose. So we need to bite the bullet as a country and start looking at these state enterprises, because they keep growing. And Mr. Chairman, if there are any bills, if there are any proposals, if we can avoid, if possible, bills that continue introducing the creation of a new authority, a new parastatal, a new whatever, whether it is from the executive or whether it's a private member's motion, I think we should stop this until the country is in a position to take a bigger responsibility on some of these things. So I think I'll stop there because I was picking up around that political and broad policy level. But I would want the more detailed conversations on some specific issues to go to my colleagues. But please, for all Kenyans, foreign direct investments which we are able to get is because Kenya took some important decisions. By you having an exchange rate that is determined by the market, by you having people being able to invest and take away their money, this is a very serious anchor policy that Kenya has put in place. I can tell you that there are some countries where the regime around their monetary policy is still so far behind. You cannot transfer your profits. You cannot pay dividends when it's supposed to be paid. It's a big problem for some of those countries. So we have the right environment to bring in foreign direct investment. Indeed, even our constitution that allows the free speech and all that is happening. What we talk about when we say don't scare away, it means it's referring more not to the constitutionally and provided processes of picketing, but it's to the violence. When violence becomes the part of the game, investors get their properties destroyed, they're left with bank loans to deal with and so forth. That is how you scare away foreign direct investment. But if you're just protesting and moving, nobody will bother you, because that is part of our law. And we should also encourage a culture where that is done peacefully. But to be honest, our businessmen have lost more than 6 to 7 billion shillings worth of property in terms of destruction. Their supplies, their stocks have been destroyed, and very few of them may have insured for riots and public. They may have insured for fire and other things. But when you go and take up the insurance policy around public riots and destruction, it's a very, very expensive policy. And very few business people will be able to take that. So there are consequences. And those are the ones we say that are detrimental to not just FDI, but even to local domestic investors, because you must also have the local investor doing his bit so that the foreign direct investor can also understand there is need to invest in that country. So we can only appeal to our young people that as we do what we have to do, when it is necessary for us to do it, let us make sure that we do it within the confines of the law and look at the bigger picture that we want to create. I think, let me rest my case there for the time being.
Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, I will try and focus on areas that the Honorable Prime Cabinet Secretary has not touched on. The first one is on the issue you raised, Chair, on the A&A. Yes, we have a large part of our country, most of our people are in the informal sector, but they also get services from government. And there are levies and fees which are charged. And this is an area we are focused on as what we call non-tax revenue. So we take your views on board, because I think you mentioned about the sports fund and the tourism fund. We will work around it to streamline. And there's a lot that is going on that area. Perhaps we can present to you in a future date, but so much is happening, including forcing every entity of government that provides services to move to e-citizen platform, because we have a greater view. And since we moved most of the entities to e-citizen platform, we have seen daily transactions captured have now increased from around 70 million, and the last figure I saw last Friday was around 350 million. And there is a possibility with greater support to the government digital unit, which is under Mr. Ndungu, and also the State Department of ICT and e-citizen department, we could actually raise it to even $1 billion shillings. So I think that's work in progress, and we agree with you, including IRA. We want every entity to indicate how much they are raising. On the issue of development, the issue of the constitutionality on development budget and the 1.5 billion haircut, I will want to give Mwenda, he will come to it later. Vice Chair, you spoke about the impact of the 47 SOEs. And yes, we are going to have a two-stage approach. First, we have identified those 47. We have to get approval from Cabinet, which we have that to go ahead. Now we are going through consultations to do mergers and wind up where necessary. And it will be two-stage. There will be no no employee who will lose their job initially. But what we want to save is the recurrent expenditure, like rent, another vehicles and the rest. There are many areas we can save, even as we work out on how to deal with the staff. And so I want to give that assurance that there is no one who is losing their job, at least initially, as we work on the second part to make sure that even when you leave, you are living with some. No doubt, there is duplicity of work. There are entities performing similar roles. And some, we don't have enough time now, but we can pending bills committee, which I should remember when the Minister for Finance in October. We have received 2 reports so far, and we have it recognized within the fiscal framework. We have said the 220 billion that we did not pay as exchequer, which is, there is no way they can be fast charged, like counties did not get 1 month. So we have to budget for them to get in this year the money they were to get last year. The same for the CDF, unless the honorable members accept to forego the 13.5 billion, we thought we could budget it so that you are paid together with the budget for this year. The same thing for our pensioners who are not paid. That's money already incurred, and we need to make sure we safeguard our pensioners. And so that is ring-fenced. So the balance from 220 minus 76, the balance now becomes fast charge in this year's budget. And as per the circulars already released by the Minister for Finance. And yes, it is true that our growth rate will be affected because cutting that, much like the 100 and almost half of our development budget has been cut. Definitely this will slow down, but it is an area that we expect that we will not stay in this space for long. It is a temporary situation that we are in, and we are certain that we will come out of it. The issue of austerity measures and corruption, I think Honorable PCS has touched on it, and I think I leave it to that. Auditing public debt. I want to assure Kenyans that we are very transparent. In fact, I don't think there is any country that's as transparent as Kenya. You visit our website and you will see that we have a summary statement of public debt. The last one we just uploaded last week for 22-23 in foreign currency. It indicates bilateral donors, all of them, what currency we have borrowed in, how much is outstanding, how much principal is being paid, drawdowns, and outstanding amount which is remaining. And it's very detailed. You can get all the information you need. And this information is from 2009 up to now. Then there are also other information that if you want to get about debt, you can actually get them from, if you visit our website, you can have our annual borrowing plan, our annual debt management reports are there, our borrowing program performance, our debt and borrowing policy, our debt sustainability analysis, if you want to see, external debt public register, we have it, external resources estimates handbook, fiscal commitment and contingent liabilities, our guaranteed debt is available, Kenya's external resources policy, and many, many others. Our website is very rich. If you have any information, please visit. But over and above that, our Auditor General also gives regular reports on this. I think Honorable PCS has talked about projects, and as answered, we don't target any projects in terms of who voted what. I think at least at the level of our technical team. And areas of budget cuts, I know the issue of equity has come in and has come in before. We have taken note of that. And of course, austerity over 5 years, these are also things we have put in place. When we do our fiscal framework, we make sure we also do the projections on all those. So I think Honorable Milo Odhiambo, you spoke about, you also spoke about equity and the need to preserve people projects. I wish we could, but it was very difficult to go through it. But I think what guided is, of course, what is priority for this government and what is ring-fenced under better bottom-up economic transformation as projects which are important. But definitely there are areas that I would not have wanted to see suffering: electricity, roads. Those are important areas for our communities. But it's one of those, unfortunately, we had to suffer. And then Secretary General, I think you called him Daktari, I didn't get the name. I think you also spoke about areas of budget cuts. And I agree with you, if we don't address some of these things, and that's why we hope we can get out of this space where we have to do budget cuts, especially that are very important areas. There are areas like recurrent, and if you look at it, you will see, I don't know if I have it with me here, we have done 100% cut. Let me just go through that area so that you can see which area has suffered what. Yes. On page 17, if you all of the document that you have, that the Prime CS read, we have cut communication supplies and services by 20%. And it's because we had done it earlier, but also because people are not traveling, we don't want to impact also on internet. So we must still provide for money for internet so that people can be able to do virtual meetings and all that. That's why there is ring fencing. Domestic travel and subsistence, we have done a cut of 50%, and this is a further cut to what we had under the PPS. For membership fees, dues and subscription to professional and trade bodies, we have done 100% cut. Foreign travel and subsistence and other transportation costs, is suffering 20% further cut from what we had done earlier. Training is the same thing, another 20% cut. Hospitality supplies and services, unfortunately, yes, it's going to affect our hotels, but it's an area where if you cut travel, then definitely it also affects on that. Confidential expenditures, 100% cut. And contracted professional services, 20%. Monitoring and evaluation is an area we didn't like, but we had to do 100%. Even other operating expenses, 100%. Then all refurbishment of buildings, we have cut 100% in terms of the budget. Purchase of motor vehicles and other transport equipment is like frozen. Nothing, 100% cut. Purchase of office furniture and general equipment, 100% cut. Purchase of generators, 100% cut. Rehabilitation and renovation, 100%. Housing loans to public servants, I think is also affected. I think you have this table. It is an indication of where we have tried to focus on. We wish we had more on this. I think I already told you that most of the recurrent expenditure is what we call autonomous. You have very little to cut. And if I can just draw numbers for you so that I make my point, we have in this budget 2.832 trillion as recurrent expenditure. Out of this, we have domestic interest, which is 750 billion, and foreign interest, 260 billion. So only to service interest payment, that's 1.01 trillion. Then pension is around 186. So you're talking about 1.2 trillion of 2.8. So 2.8 minus 1.8 is 1.6. Out of that, we have salaries here that I see here, wages and salaries of around 650 billion. And this excludes salaries to sagas. And then you look at the others now, or junior secondary capitation, for instance, civil service reform, famine, KRA reforms, defense. All this, you have very little to cut. So the recurrent expenditure is basically, you can't do much. That's why the only area we could do, we tried our best to cut expenditure on recurrent, and we only managed to cut under the executive recurrent budget on O&M. You see on page 4, we managed 15 billion. Removal of the office of the first lady and second lady, we managed 1.2 billion. Rationalization of the budget for advisors was done by 50%, and we managed about 600 billion. And I think Parliament, you lost 2.7, Judiciary lost 500, and then private, there's capitation also, where we have lost about 1.7 billion. And then reduction of earmarked provision of phase 2 salary adjustment, which was for all public servants. We have had to spend this 15 billion. And really, this is an area we would have wanted as National Treasury to make sure our employees at least are getting some salary increment. I think we indicated the Maraga task force. We request you to look at it, if possible, with some minor adjustment. It would really be good for our security sector. If you
Around how much?
Around 3.5 billion, which will be enough for at least to address the security sector, including police, and the other security areas. If you can look at that, that would be great. So I think I've answered that to say there is very little room. Then debt, our borrowing, our capacity to borrow is not there anymore. In the last 10 years, it has dwindled. I think when we started 10 years ago, our current capacity for debt was rated low, no high. And our possibility of risk, I mean debt, we call it debt risk.
Elevated debt risk.
Yeah, elevated debt risk was very low. Then by 5 years ago, it was rated medium. 3 years ago, it went to high. So we were at a cliff. So if you continue taking more, then you can easily find yourself in an unsustainable position. And I welcome all of you to read the DSA, Debt Sustainability Report, in our website. You will see all the details. So the best way to go forward is to do fiscal consolidation, meaning lessen debt, rationalize expenditure, and work on revenues. And that is what we have been trying to do. Unfortunately, in this budget, we have had to move from the budget, the 3.2% of budget deficit that we wanted. Because we tried our best to cut expenditure, we could not do much. And that's why we said we have to borrow to the tune of 4.3. Something, if we had passed the finance bill, probably would have gotten enough revenue to pass that. So I think I will stop here. I know Honorable David Ocheng raised, and Prime CS has answered you. Of course, we have a process that we go through when coming up with the finance bill, starting from, I think now we are going to do, in September, we go for sector working groups. Then we get budget policy statement by December. Then we get public views. People write to us in Treasury. We get a lot of proposals, very many. Then we have a committee that sits to look at that, and then whatever we agree, finally it goes to cabinet. Cabinet then owns it and comes to you, to Parliament. You also have a role as Parliament, and that's how we do. Just to say that we've been trying, in coming up with the finance bill, we were looking at fiscal consolidation, and I think without the finance bill now, we are pushing KRA to look at technology deployment. And I hope KRA staff is here. I think I saw Mwangi. We will want him to tell us what they are doing. There is a target we have set for them to raise more revenue even when we don't have additional tax measures. We have tax policy which has been approved by Parliament and by Cabinet, and also it came to you, to Parliament. We have generated a medium-term revenue strategy out of it. And if you look at that strategy, the intention is actually to lower the tax rate, coming down. Corporate tax is supposed to come down from 30% to 25%. VAT is supposed to come from 16 to around 14. So the idea is to really come down over the medium term. It's just that we were in extraordinary situations where this could not happen this time around. But the intention is to broaden the tax base, have more Kenyans in the tax bracket, then we can have lower tax rates. And because we need to focus more on consumption tax than income tax. I think the people bearing the greatest amount of this burden are the salary, those who are earning salary. And there are many who are not earning salary, but I think could also find their way into the tax bracket. So we have KRA reforms. I'll ask the gentleman there to speak to it. And I think I want to stop here and give Mr. Mwenda to address those that I have not addressed, because he's also the key technical person that advises the PS.
Before we go there, Honorable Shinari, you had something to say.
Before the PS moves out of there, if you go on your page 17, number 7, there is examination fee and invigilation fees. You've removed 100%. Does this include the O level? Because we know Form 4 is still there, plus 8 might have been phased out.
Yeah, I think this is an area, unfortunately, suffered the cut. It is for you as a committee, you need to look at it how this can be addressed. But from what came, we could not do much about it, yeah.
PSA, the only way for us to look at it is to reinstate, unfortunately. So,
Chairman, on the same page.
You will guide us on that.
Yeah, we will discuss, because this I have to be truthful. That is an area that suffered the cut.
Members, let Mwenda first complete, then we take the last round.
Chairman, on the same page.
I'm coming there. Let him first finish. We finish the first part, then we come for the last one.
Chairman, the question that I was asked to respond to is whether the National Treasury has complied with the threshold set in law for development budget under the supplementary. And Chair, under Section 15 of the Public Finance Management Act of 2012, it provides the thresholds that guide the preparation of the budget, and the development budget threshold is set at 30% of the total budget. Unfortunately, under the current supplementary, because of the deep cuts, we have deviated slightly. We are at 28.1% of GDP when you take the criteria as defined in the regulations. But fortunately, the law allows the Cabinet Secretary to deviate temporarily with an understanding that we will then go back under extraneous circumstances like currently. The law allows the Cabinet Secretary to deviate. So that's the position.
We can, through you, Chair, Mwangi of KRA, please introduce yourself, and then you can address the issues, especially on reforms going on at KRA.
Yes, Mwangi, just be brief.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to start by saying that in this year, 8 million taxpayers filed their returns compared to 6.3 that filed the previous year, that is 2023. That's a growth of 1.7 million taxpayers, a growth of 26%. So we are leveraging on technology to ensure that we simplify taxation. We make it easier for taxpayers to file and pay taxes. And just to mention a few of the technology that we are implementing, one of them is e-Teams that has been running, and we want to simplify it further so that then taxpayers are able to transmit invoices smoothly. Then we are also looking at integrating with various ecosystems, financial institutions. We are talking about property management system, so that we are able to have a view of what is happening in the property management space. We are also integrating with IFMIS, so that then we are able to see how much suppliers have been paid, so that then they are able to file their returns. So those are some of the reforms that we are implementing, most of them technology-based. And this is to ensure that we have visibility of transactions. That is the underlying technology platform, that we have visibility of transactions as taxpayers transact business. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's very good and precise. Then members, let's go to Honorable Makali Mulu, then Honorable Atandi.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'll be very brief because a number of questions have been raised. But I also want to join my colleagues in appreciating the presentation. It was very well done. So I'll focus more on public debt. As a result of the withdrawal of the finance bill, Treasury proposes to borrow additional about 141 billion. And when you look at the original medium-term debt strategy, the proposal was you do 55 external, 45 domestic. Now, the additional borrowing is being proposed to go domestic, which changes the figures now to about domestic about 53, external 47. I was wondering whether now with that change, whether Treasury might have to look at the medium-term debt strategy, because the scenario analysis then might need to change. So I would want to hear your comment on that. And then tied to that question, when you push more to domestic borrowing, you know the impact you'll have on interest payments, because the domestic interest rates are quite high. So I would want to hear, is it that now we cannot access the external market so that we go for concessional loans? Or is it by choice that we want to go domestic? And then the second question relates to the development budget cuts. In some institutions and agencies, you have just done what I would call percentage cut. For example, you say cut 50%, 50%, 50%. For example, you look at the budget of the Auditor General. The development budget is cut by 50% across the board. And I was wondering whether, as you even do your 50%, did you consider the possibility of possibly, if you have 4 projects and you have done 50% for all of them, I was thinking you would have done away with the 2 where you say push this to the next financial year and then you do 2 to completion. So, especially, are you going to allow the MDS to write to you and possibly request that you push this money to 1 project which can be completed, other than having a situation where you have 4 projects all done 50% and not completed? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Attorney.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I just want to be very brief. First of all, I want to say that I'm impressed with the austerity measures that have been put in place by Treasury, and especially on the tax cuts. I think tax cuts are genuine. The only area that I wanted to say, to express my views, is that I've seen that salaries have been retained in areas where departments have lost almost everything. My view is that, especially those salaries for advisors, I saw advisors in the office of the First Lady and all those people. I think they need to go if we are really genuine about these austerity measures. And this also goes into advisors in State House and all these places. I think if we are genuine about these cuts, let everything go. And I also wanted to advise that even Parliament here, I think we are so many. We need also to see how we can cut MPs. We need a few MPs. This is, I think, the approach that we need to employ wholesome, because cutting the size of government is something that we need to do as a country. That is my view. The other thing I wanted to say, Bwana Chairman, is that I disagree with the Principal Secretary on his assertion that the economy is performing. I think we're looking at everything here. There's really nothing to buttress that assertion. If the economy was really growing, then we would see that reflected in the tax revenues. Tax revenues are almost stagnant, and we are not seeing anything going up. So unless there's evidence that the KRA leakages in KRA, if there's evidence that there are leakages in KRA, then I think that's something that we need to be shown. And maybe KRA needs to give us a report about how they project their tax revenues. And I know that, and my colleague observed on Rivuchieng, that it is true that there are two KRAs. The KRA that is, we know, then there's the KRA that is silent. I think that's an area that we need to use to see that indeed the economy is going on. Thirdly, Mr. Chairman, I'm disappointed that in the current scenario where we have the youth uprising, and that has even caused us to withdraw the finance bill and etc., I have not seen anything in this budget that reflects that the government is trying to address the concerns of the youths. There's nothing on job creation, there's nothing on addressing corruption, there's nothing on attracting foreign investments. So I think these are the fundamental issues that I think this budget ought to have been re-engineered so that we attempt to address some of these issues. Otherwise, with this budget, I don't think that we are operating in the same space with the youth and with the situation we are facing as a country. Because if you do a budget that does not even answer one question, one concern of the youths, I think that's something that we need to look at, Mr. Chairman. Otherwise, the experts in Treasury, I think I need to challenge the experts in Treasury. The experts in Treasury that are here, I think I've seen you for many years since I joined Parliament. You have been the same people. You need to go back and think through how we can be able to help the economy. Because if you are going to sit there, the same people, and there's nothing new you are creating, then it is going to be unfair for the economy.
Chair, I didn't want to interrupt my good friend, but when you say there is nothing good and you are a member of the budget committee, and we've just placed money to employ teachers, interns, doctor interns, are those not young people in this country? Let's not mislead the public on the budget, and we know where the money is going to. Thank you.
Chairman, I don't think it's right for my colleague to try to answer me from this side, because this budget is generated from the other side, and there is not just teachers that will be employed that will make the youth of this country be happy. Who told you that the people who are routing on the seas are only teachers? The people routing on the seas are so many, and there are many issues that they are concerned about, which we need to address as a wholesome. And so I think my challenge to the Treasury team is quite in order. Thank you.
The Treasurer of the ruling party.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, CPS and the entire team for the good presentation. We are all most of us we are all politicians here, but sometimes we don't need to play a lot of politics in serious matters like this one. I believe I'm in the UDA party and I'm the treasurer of the ruling party. So when you say that the projects were cut, those who voted no, and I'm one person who voted yes using the microphone, and my project has stalled for the last 10 years, and the money that was in that project was cut, almost 40 million out of the 100 million that was there. Let me not belabor that, but my question goes to, we have so many stalled projects currently in the country. We have quite a number of stalled projects. Is there a way that instead of putting 100 million in a project of 2.2 billion, and this guy has already other pending bills, is there a way we can maybe fund 2 or 3 projects to completion? Because it doesn't make any economic sense. You give a contractor 60 million who has a pending bill of maybe 500 million. This guy will not go back to site. If we get a way of funding 2, 3, 4 projects to completion, it will make more economic sense than funding a project 50 million for 10, 15 years. That project will not even make any economic sense. Number 2 is on the A&As, which I think my brother had already raised, the chairman, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro. We should get away of these A&As from maybe KPA, KAA, getting into KRA, and that money
being used, because these institutions tend to use that money, tend to create projects so that they can be able to absorb that money. Thank you so much. I don't have much to say on issues to do with youth. I think the JSS teachers are part of the youth. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Honorable Shinari.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, allow me also to appreciate the presentation by the Prime Cabinet Secretary and the way he has answered calmly our questions. I have only one concern, Chair. I would like to know the effect of the protestation that we are having on daily basis. Maybe you could have a figure to tell us how much the country is losing if we are not working and we are on the roads. Number two, Chair, it's also a concern that the youth are saying they will occupy the airport. Why? Because they feel the airport is on sale. We have a clear understanding of what is the actual position, so that wherever they are, people can understand. We also understand that we have the social media, which is speculating a lot of things, Chair. That's my only concern. Thank you.
Honorable Ariwario Hasaka.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is to ask Treasury, where they have consulted the ministry on cutting their votes. Is there consultation? Chair, also, I differ with the party leader Ocheng. He said the people are being punished because of voting either no or yes. Some who voted yes because of their people, they have also been punished. Chair, this resettlement fund, the resettlement of the landless, you know there is basic needs. That is shelter, food, water. You are removing the resettlement fund. For that case, people affected by floods, for Tana River, Mai Mahiu and Muranga. Then, at the same time, you are saying the funding the critical government projects, like coffee debt, 2 billion, sugarcane, 1 billion, KCC factory, 500 million, and many others, Chair. So, Chair, can Treasury prioritize the suffering Kenyans? Because my people are living in the tented camps for the last 2 years, Chair. Those people are suffering, mothers, children. There are schools which have been completely damaged by floods. So, Chair, is the Treasury sincere to remove such a critical funds to help Kenyans who are suffering in the camps? Thank you, Chair.
Let's now give the National Treasury the opportunity to now respond, and we finish.
Chair, can I just say one thing?
You had
Just one brief thing.
Chair, you better be brief then.
Yes, it's very brief. Chair, if you actually look at what we are looking at from Treasury, is what they have provided, but not what has actually come from the various departments, the details. If you look at the social protection, what was presented by the Departmental Committee on Social Protection, Youth Enterprise Development Fund deducted 100%. Youth Empowerment Centers, 100%. I can give you, but if you actually look at the part on youth, all of them are 100%. And then finally, Chair, because I've said I'm brief, the treasurer of UDA, it's very unfortunate because he has got a reduction of a whooping 40 million out of 100 million. Me from Suba North has lost a whooping 5 million out of 5 million. Equity. Equity must reign. Okay. So he has lost 40 million out of 100. I've lost 5 million out of 5 million. 100%.
Mine is that.
So I don't
please.
mind missing my 5
The
million.
briefness has ended.
Equity.
The time I had given for a brief comment has ended.
My project
Honorable
has
Vice
been
Chair,
there for the
Honorable
last
Vice Chair.
10 years.
Honorable Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. P.S. I also want to advise you on other areas where you can make savings. If we can do an audit of all government assets in terms of office space, so that once we identify, because there are some MDAs with a lot of space, others do not have, they're renting. So we're spending a lot of money paying for rent. This is government buildings. Then you just, allocate office space to those who do not have. Then we'll save instead of paying rent. I think that's also an area that we could explore once we carry out an audit. Thank you.
Member for Nyeri, very, very briefly.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just wanted to support the cabinet approval regarding Kenya Airways. I can see they want to do restructuring, and we've been losing a lot of money. There's no value for money for KQ. The other thing is about public participation. PS has talked about it. We are going through what we are going through because many Kenyans, they didn't know anything about finance bill. Actually, they were saying it is the president who has brought the finance bill. So I think it's always good and it's important for us to go to our local radios and everywhere and we talk to our people so that they can understand. Thank you so much for your good presentation.
Your Excellency, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the members. Very quickly, the tax issues and the targets that will be dealt with by the KRA gentleman. But looking at the figures, from what I know, is that the revenue collection has been rising, although it may have been falling short of the targets. But he'll elaborate a little more on that. Let me start with a very critical issue. The cost of shutdowns. The Honorable Shinali has asked whether we have quantified it in terms of figures. I can only say this is work in progress because it will take some time for us to filter through all the details. But I can tell you that the initial estimate was close to 7 billion just from the mayhem that was visited on various business people and so forth, and the losses they suffered. And maybe that's actually a conservative estimate. But the daily cost of the various shutdowns remains high, and later on, I'm sure the numbers will feed into the economy and we'll start feeling the pressure. Let me discount immediately that the airport, Jomo Kenyatta Airport, is not on sale. This is a public asset. It is a strategic asset. And if it was going to be sold, you can only do it after a full public process that Parliament endorses. So anybody who is giving the impression that the airport, Jomo Kenyatta Airport, has been sold is not being factual. It is not true. What we need to appreciate is that we will need to modernize our airport. And that means investment will have to take place at the airport. We need a new terminal. You remember there was a greenfield terminal, but it never took off. The contractual engagement had its challenges. There was litigation, it stalled, and the rest is history because it's stalled in court. So what we know that is important is that going forward, the Kenya Airports Authority must look at its investment program very, very carefully, make sure that everything is transparent, so that during the expansion process of the second terminal. If it is under PPP arrangement, and let it be done properly, thoroughly, through the legal process, so that everybody knows what is going on. But I want to assure Kenyans that the Kenya Airports Authority is not up for sale. The other thing that I want to mention to Kenyans is that one of our long-term strategies is to create Nairobi as a logistical hub. And we are talking even with the United Nations offices in Nairobi, so that apart from just the new terminal that will come up, we want to create Jomo Kenyatta Airport, have part of Mombasa at the port, and have all through to Naivasha logistics hubs that meet certain standards, so that the United Nations can use this destination, Kenya, as a logistical hub for their operations. Just the way there's a logistics hub in Italy, Brindisi, by the United Nations. So these are some of the long-term objectives we have around the Jomo Kenyatta Airport, but it's not for sale. So I hope that clears the air. I want to state that the issues of the floods, they did cause a lot of damage across the board. All the 47 counties had various levels of impact. And the full cost is estimated at close to 100 billion. That is infrastructure that is damaged and so forth. People displaced, schools ruined. We have data that has been collected on this. Hospitals have been messed up and so forth, and other forms of infrastructure. But clearly, the recovery process will now take time and will be slower because of the financial situation we are facing. I do agree that we could do a lot of savings from the rental capacity, so that we don't keep on incurring heavy contractual obligations. That's a good point that we can take up. The issue of KQ, it is a delicate matter, but we have been trying very hard to bring KQ back on board, because, Mr. Chairman, the core revenue of the Kenya Airports Authority, for instance, in terms of landing fees, in terms of cargo and what have you, is largely dependent on Kenya Airways. So it is an area that we need to look at carefully. It's strategic to the economy of the country, and we need to find a way of turning it around. And I just want to remind members that it's unfortunate that Kenya Airways went to this situation again, because if you go back in history, you will find that Kenya Airways was a fully owned state parastatal that was making losses then. It was then privatized, and partners like KLM were brought on board. It then turned into a profit-making agency that was even now paying a dividend and being traded on the stock market. And then again, somewhere along the line, some other things happened, and we find ourselves where we are. But we are working towards trying to get it on some sound footing, and maybe looking at also the possibilities of a different strategic partner, so that it can continue on a trajectory of recovery. On the youth programs, I can just summarize that if you look at the issue of why we want to create aggregation industrial parks, why we want to create growth in some of these sectors, it is because we are targeting job creation. We are targeting the value chains so that jobs can be created and employment can be found for the younger people. So the holistic position is that all these measures we are putting in place, they may appear painful at this point in time, but going forward, clearly they are designed to spur growth in the economy. And the largest generator of jobs will eventually be the private sector. I may quote the housing levy and the programs that are going on, whether it is in Kibera or Mukuru and so forth. These are areas that we want to have, even in a more robust way, integrating the private sector in this initiative, so that we can create jobs for the younger people, because they need jobs, and that is what we must focus on. Finally, Mr. Chairman, so that I don't speak again, and my colleagues will finalize, is this whole area around debt, and they'll say something about Mheshimiwa's question on the long-term debt strategy. The one thing I want to make clear to all Kenyans, and I know parliamentarians know this, but perhaps we have not communicated better for the other. Whichever way we go, we will have to pay our external debt. It will not be written off. So our Kenyans, it may appear sometimes to give simplistic solutions, but there are no simplistic solutions. We will have to settle our debt. That is what makes a nation. It's been committed, it's a sovereign debt, it has been made by others who are there. Our forefathers made commitments. What is biting us, and you all know, is more of the commercial debt. The expensive debt in our portfolio is what is hitting us very hard. It's not the concessionary funds. The concessionary funds, as you know, are from the World Bank, some of our bilateral members, the SDRs around the fund. These are largely concessionary funds. It's the commercial ones that are hitting us very hard. But the reality is, they are sovereign debt. We cannot run away from it. Even if another person took over, whether it is Atandi and he became president of Kenya today, and maybe one day he will become, he will still have to deal with the public debt. It will not be written off. So people should stop moving around and giving the impression that these debts can be written off. They will not be written off. We have to pay. The lessons we learn is how do we engage in entering into debt as we go into the future. But the reality, we have to pay. And again, for those who are speaking, for you to have credibility as a nation in terms of settling your debt, in terms of being able to pitch for your country, again, I want to dispel another rumor, because it's important I speak to Kenyans with the full truth. And as they say, speaking the truth and nothing but the truth. In order for us to resolve our debt challenge, we have to have a program with the IMF. It cannot be otherwise. And if anybody continues to mislead people that you can walk away from the IMF and all this and have your way, it is not true. And I speak because at one time I was involved deeply in the rescheduling of Kenya's public debt. when I was Minister for Finance. And you need to have the IMF on your side and the World Bank on your side for you to have a hearing from your creditors. So ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, I think I wanted that to go on record so that it's not a question of us misleading the Kenyan public. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the Prime Cabinet Secretary has handled the matter of public debt very well. Since Honorable Mulu is my Vice Chair in the Debt and Privacy Committee, I'm sure we can go into the details. But yes, I agree with you. The 141 billion, which is the additional borrowing, coming as a result of failure of the finance bill to be enacted or assented to, is giving us a composition of 55, about 47% external, and majority being 57, actually being 53 being domestic. And our medium-term debt strategy, of course, has indicated how we want to profile, and we want to have 55% external and 45. But you know, the exchange dynamics have moved on, and also when I look at the what we have, what we could see as we prepare the budget on program loans and program A, what we expect as grants and loans, together with what we project for commercial borrowing, particularly Panda bond, Samurai bond, and sustainability-linked bonds. We are also thinking of debt swaps. All these have not been finalized. What we have put here is what we had farm side, but the rest are still continuing. And as you know, we will come back to you as when necessary when we make progress on our bid to get external financing. So the clear picture will come, but it's work in progress. For now, everything, the residual is what we are calling domestic borrowing. What we take account of all external for borrowing, what we don't, I mean, the balance now becomes what we borrow. But when we make progress on constitutional financing, like we are yet to start with the World Bank on DPO, we are beginning to start discussions even on a new program, probably with the IMF and others. That will change. So we will still keep within our strategy, which is which you are familiar with. And you asked about the development cuts, whether we will write to MDS. Yes, our desire, and I've told most of my colleagues always, if we want a 10% cut, we would rather allow the MDA to look at his budget and determine where to cut, as long as we get the outcome of what we look for. Unfortunately, in this situation, I think we were a bit in a hurry, so we still give the opportunity to MDA so that if there are projects, you can leave some projects and complete a few others. We will be flexible enough so that we do it. But we have also seen situations when we give accounting officers the opportunity to choose which project. They go for the ones that they know very well, out of public pressure, later they will be required to be brought back. An example, I was just, not that they do it, but even like capitation. If you remove capitation and then later the time comes we need to pay, you have to pay. So sometimes that flexibility also is not there because accounting officers sometimes don't live with the spirit of the cut that we want. Hence this route that we have gone to. I think the issue of salaries, I think you gave, is it Adani? Yes, Mheshimiwa. Yeah, yours were comments, and we take them on board. And we will see also the areas of the advisors which you have talked about. The data, I think you are saying you are not in agreement with me on the performance of the economy. I want to tell you that I am right in the data I have given you. When I say the economy has performed by 5.6%, it is the data in our economic survey. And you can also check what other independent bodies have said about the growth of Kenya. Look at the World Bank projections, look at the IMF projections. These are independent assessments. So it is true Our economy is growing 5% plus, is the highest in Africa. I mean, and even in sub-Saharan Africa. So, and I agree with you, the revenues are not commensurate. The revenues we are getting are not commensurate with the performance of the economy. In fact, I've worked as percent of GDP, we are seeing this year we expect like 14.7% tax to GDP. That's not where we want to be. In a growth of 5%, that should give us much higher. And so the issue of addressing leakages is still there, because I think we are not collecting enough given our economic performance. And on the jobs issue, I think Prime CS has tried to address. Actually, the ring fencing of the budget has been more to focus on areas that will create jobs for the young people. The Hustler Fund is been ring fenced. Fertilizer subsidy program to support our farmers. Leather industrial park in Kinani is more about creating jobs in the leather industry. Prime CS talked about county aggregation industrial parks. This is also more of where we want to get jobs. Passports, IDs, and these are for young people. These are areas where we want to focus on our young people. Government shared services, EPZ, Equalization Fund, for instance, Contingency Fund. There are areas here that we have tried to ring fence. But of course, there are many that did not get, which could still be useful to the young people. I think on A&A, you spoke of entities going for projects. Yes, we call them cabro projects. They begin to look for projects to spend monies that they have. So we are very much in agreement with you. We will work on it. UDA chairman, treasurer, I think you answered it well. It shows that we don't favor. We don't look at which political party one is in. And Honorable Wario, you spoke of consultants of ministries. Yes, we take that into account. And I think the issue of resettlement fund, let me make it clear that those that did not get prioritization now does not mean they have been removed forever. It's just that this time round, we didn't have enough space, fiscal space. So it means in the next opportunity that comes, we will then look at this. And I think I am done on the issue of audit of government assets. That's an important point. We have actually discussed with the PS Housing. We are doing an assessment of where all our MDS are staying, how much they are paying, how much space they have, and we see whether we can actually even match or move some. And then the issue of choosing which projects. I want to give an example. When I was PS Trade, I remember I persuaded Treasury to allow us to complete Kibit, a building in Westlands, which was 90% complete, but which had stalled for 10 years. Treasury agreed, and we managed to use only about 140 million. We did that building. Now it is fully operational. Kibit is there, and many other entities, and we have saved a lot of money in terms of rent. That's the same thing I've been telling my colleagues, even the one in, is it the one in industrial area? That Kirdi should be completed. We just need to ring fence money, have it completed, and then we use it. And these are practical ways that we really need to do. And we are engaging our colleagues on this. And so thank you for all the comments that you have given. I think I will stop here for now.
Members, you seem satisfied. Anyone with any other issue? So thank you very much. Members, thank you very much. The team from the National Treasury, led by His Excellency Musalia Mudavadi. We, as I have said, are on the same team. All of us are Kenyans, and we want the best results for our economy. And therefore, whatever we are doing on this side and whatever you are doing on your head, we are playing the same ball. And we'll do our best even as we anticipate to table this report tomorrow. So thank you very much again, and let's keep this engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your support.
So members, please, you remain. There is another session
Chair.
for report writing.
Chair. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the PCS for the work you've done. It's just been elevated recently, but you've done a fantastic job. So congratulations and keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dan Mwashako.
I think we can do that. We can actually do that.
So members, please remain.
Show it.
We have another session for